Chapter 1134. Master Zhang San's blood turned into a red bead the size of a fist and spun around in the air. Ya opened her mouth and the blood bead was sucked into her mouth. Master Zhang San turned into a dried corpse and fell to the ground. Then, Ya looked at the people from the Misty School. How dare you? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked and did not dare to delay any longer. He reached out his hand and the lotus throne appeared in the air. He pointed his finger and the lotus throne emitted a rainbow light that covered Zhang Xiaohu, Peacock, and Chen Chun. Haha, Ya covered her mouth and laughed. Little husband, don't be afraid. Zhang Xiaohu is your second brother. Why would I hurt him? Besides, their cultivation is far from enough. Their blood can only be used to refine the demon flag. There are many people like that in the martial arts world. I have no reason to make you unhappy. Then, she waved her sleeve and 2 rays of red light shot out towards Nun Jingyi and Nun Shuqing. Stop it! Zhang Xiaohua was furious. The dream-chasing sword flew out again and turned into 64 rays of light that shot towards Ya. Io, little husband. You are so cruel. How dare you attack me? You wronged me for loving you so much. Ya smiled and did not retract the red light. It was as if the rays of light could not hurt her at all. Sure enough, when the 64 rays of light hit Ya's body, the demon flag's clothes shook slightly and countless black gas blocked the rays of light. Little husband, do you know why I have been talking to you so patiently? Why I have been answering your questions? Ya smiled brightly. Rushi, you attacked me the moment you came up. I am tired of dealing with you. Not only you, but you see, I have been attacking the monks of the Dalan Temple since the beginning. Why did I not attack the people of the incense cult? That's because the monks of the Dalan Temple are pigs. No matter how high their cultivation is, they are no match for me. As for Yu Mingxin's disciple, I still have to think about it. I can only wait until the first layer of the demonic flag is successfully refined before I can make a move. Then, a bitter expression appeared on her face. This devilish flag is far too difficult to refine. There was so much blood at the foot of Yao Mountain, as well as the quintessence blood of so many experts from the Tao of Immortals, but I've only just reached the first level. Only after reaching the first level can I dare to stand tall and face you directly. Do you know how nervous I was in front of you just now? Zhang Xiaohua finally understood. She gritted her teeth. But don't be afraid, my husband. I'm sincere to you and your family. In the future, this world will belong to the 2 of us. Let's build your Beidou school into a first-class school. Let the Tenryu sect, the Incense sect, and the Misty school become its puppets. While he was talking to Zhang Xiaohua, the other 2 red lights had already killed the heavily injured Nun Shuqing and Nun Jingyi. Their quintessence blood had also been sucked out by Ya. Zhang Xiaohua looked on, not knowing what to do. At this moment, Ya's expression suddenly changed. She frowned and closed her eyes. Her body fell from the sky. When she regained her balance, she opened her eyes. Her eyes were clear and filled with pain. She looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, I'm Meng. Meng. Zhang Xiaohua hesitated and looked at the familiar eyes. I have to go. Xiaohua, Ya's consciousness is getting stronger and stronger. I'm destined to be devoured by her. The more I'm devoured by Ya, the more I know. Meng cried. I really love you. Zhang Xiaohua was very surprised. I know you love me. Xiaohua, you don't understand. Meng said in a panic. Meng's eyes turned slightly red, but she gritted her teeth and the redness gradually faded. Meng said anxiously, Xiaohua, I don't have much time. You have to hear that what you said was true, but what she said to you was all lies. She didn't kill you because she wanted to keep you captive. When your cultivation is high, she will absorb your quintessence blood. Furthermore, this demonic flag of hers needs to be refined 9 times. Not only does she want to use this demonic flag to raise her cultivation, she also wants to use it to break open space and return to the ruins. It took so many people's blood and lives to refine 1 layer of the demon flag. Every time the demon flag was refined, it would take 9 times more blood essence than the previous layer. Flowery, You have to calculate how many people's blood essence would be needed to refine this demon flag. Even if you kill the entire Jianghu and the entire human world, it still won't be enough. Tisk, Zhang Xiaohua gasped. If that was the case, the entire human world would become hell. Quick, little blossom, while I'm still stopping ya, you kill me quickly. As Meng spoke, she wanted to take down the demonic flag, but no matter how hard she tried, the demonic flag didn't move at all. Meng was about to cry. She shouted, Xiaohua, use the flying sword. Use chasing dream. Let chasing dream become killing dream. Zhang Xiaohua also cried. Chasing dream couldn't move forward even after several attempts. Meng, how can I bear to let you go? How can I kill you with my own hands? Unless there's no other way? Zhang Xiaohua's voice was hoarse. Meng smiled bitterly when she saw that chasing dream didn't move forward. She shook her head and said, Xiaohua, you are wrong. You don't love me at all. Zhang Xiaohua also shook her head. Meng, what nonsense are you talking about? How can I not love you? It's true. It's not your heart that loves me, and it's not my heart that loves you. It's the heart-binding curse that you used that's causing trouble. You used the heart-binding curse to bind our hearts together. Meng smiled bitterly and cried, Heart-binding curse? Zhang Xiaohua was dazed and didn't know how to answer. Xiaohua, do you think? We only met once outside Poyang town and it'll be engraved in our hearts forever? Can you think about it every day and night? Can you not eat or drink? Meng said while crying. Why not? Meng, I've always treated you like this. Sometimes when I think of you, my heart will ache and I'll be happy. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head. Meng's eyes lit up and she said happily, I'm the same. But then she shook her head and said, But we're trapped by Ya's heart-binding curse. This is all Ya's doing. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua still didn't understand, Meng wiped her tears and said, In fact, when Ya came here, she first established the Tenryu sect. She called herself Sakura and trained a few heavenly kings. In order to increase her power, Ya established the Dalan Temple. She combined the kung fu of the devil world with some exercises she got from the Buddhism sect and formed the Dalan Temple. On the surface, the exercises of the Dalan Temple are Buddhism sect's exercises, but the foundation is the exercises of the devil cult. All the monks of the Dalan Temple have succeeded in practicing them. After they passed away, their relics became elixirs for Ya to increase her power. Later, when Ya was fighting with Wan Wuxin, Yu Mingxin, and Yang Haoya for an extremely rare thing, she was seriously injured by the three of them. When Ya hid in the Guiyuan Tower of the Dalan Temple to heal, she accidentally found a kind of heart sutra of the Buddhism sect. Xiaohua, you also know that the monks of the Dalan Temple abstain from sex. The reason why they abstain from sex is because of this heart sutra. This heart sutra was unintentionally copied from the Buddhism sect. Ya comprehended this heart sutra and combined it with some kind of secret method of the devil cult. Ya found a way to live forever. Live forever? Zhang Xiaohua almost cried out. Yes, live forever. Meng looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said, Didn't you see me? How many years have I lived? Zhang Xiaohua nodded blankly. Meng sighed and continued, Ya's method was to find a man and according to the Heart Sutra, cast the Heart Sutra in the hearts of Ya and this man. Hence, Ya fell in love with this man, fell in love with him and got married. This man was the second-generation Sakura apart from Ya. Then, Ya and Sakura gave birth to a daughter, which was the first-generation saintess. This saintess was an independent person, but because Ya and Sakura had the Heart Sutra, this saintess had Ya's consciousness seed in her consciousness. When the saintess was 6 years old, Ya, according to the secret method, quietly died. Once Ya died, her seed in the saintess consciousness began to germinate. At that time, the saintess consciousness began to become chaotic. After a few months or years, Ya's consciousness grew up and swallowed the saintess consciousness. This saintess then became Ya. At this time, Ya wasn't much different from an ordinary person. She should spend most of her time in the Tenryu sect. Then, Ya would go to the Guiyuan Tower of the Dalan Temple and swallow the relics in the Guiyuan Tower to increase her power. When Ya's power had reached a certain age, Ya would go to the pugilistic world to find another man and cast the Heart Sutra again to let herself and another man fall in love with each other. Like this, the saintess of the Tenryu sect will always be Ya. Do you understand? Xiaohua, this is what the Tenryu sect passed down. The child of Sakura and the saintess must be a girl. First there was the saintess, then there was Sakura, then there was Sakura, then there were the 8-division heavenly kings. This was how they came to be. Meng looked at Zhang Xiaohua with tears in her eyes again and said while crying, "And I am this generation's saintess, which is also the reincarnated Ya. Xiaohua, you are the man that you will choose from the pugilistic world in this life. You are destined to fall in love with Ya and help each other in difficult times. You are destined to be this generation's Sakura, your daughter, the next generation's saintess, and also the next generation's Ya's reincarnation. This matter should have been done after you became an adult, but I don't know why she actually did it. When she met you at the ferry, perhaps. It's because you look very similar to that immortal Xiaohua, and you was extremely afraid of this immortal Xiaohua. So, when she met you at the ferry, she felt that you were her biggest threat at the first moment, so she cast her most powerful Heart Sutra on you." Meng seemed to be recalling something and said, "This is also the only reason why you fell in love with me." Zhang Xiaohua's face turned ashen as she listened. Her eyes were at a loss, and she didn't know how to answer. She had never thought that her painstakingly engraved love for Meng was just her method of toying with the human world, her method of immortality. "So, Xiaohua, I don't have the qualifications to talk about love with you. Our love is really a kind of absurdity." Meng cried with tears in her eyes. However, according to Ya's memory, it seems she found another method from the ring you gave her. Perhaps in the future, your daughter won't have this kind of tragedy again. But it definitely won't. Yeah, she wants to swallow you. Speaking up to here, Meng's eyes turned blood red, and her face turned cold. Her tone changed again. "Humph, what kind of storm does a little consciousness want to cause? I don't know how many little things like this I've swallowed." She then looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said coldly, "Since you already know, I won't say anything more. Although I've found a way to achieve immortality without reincarnation, I can't guarantee that this method will be completely useful. So, as the man of this generation who was implanted with the heart-binding curse with me, you have to stay by my side for the rest of your life. Unless I have no other choice, I won't abandon you." Zhang Xiaohua's eyes were already filled with determination. She stared at Ya and said coldly, "Your method is the demon flag?" "Haha, yes, it's the demon flag. It's a method to refine the blood of 10,000 spirits. If it succeeds, not to mention me, even you, I can guarantee you immortality." Zhang Xiaohua shook her head slightly. "This kind of immortality? It's better not to have it." "Ha ha ha, this kind of immortality? It's better not to have it. What a big tone." Ya laughed maniacally. "I've been struggling at death's door since tens of thousands of years ago. I've reared the Dalan temple in captivity, released the techniques of the demon realm, and searched for the saintess and Sakura. Isn't everything for the sake of immortality? How long have you lived? How do you know the wonders of immortality?" "Humph, humph," as the ancient people said. "If you can understand the true meaning of life, if two people truly love each other, even if you only live for a day, it's enough. If you don't understand why you live, don't know what love is, and only treat love as a tool to prolong your feeble existence, then, even if you've lived for tens of thousands of years, what's the use of living until you're as old as heaven and earth?" "Ha ha ha ha," you laughed maniacally again. "You're just a little human, but you're just my food and you actually want to talk about love with me? What is love? I don't need to know, and I don't want to know. You're just despicable creatures, and your emotions are even more despicable. And the love you speak of is fake. It doesn't even exist. It's just one of my techniques. You really think it's real? I saw that little thing tossing and turning over there. It's really stubborn. It actually doesn't want to be devoured by me." Then he pointed at Peacock, Zhang Xiaohu, and the rest and said, "I know, Yu Mingxin from the incense cult, and Yang Haoya from the Misty school. They should have been able to cultivate successfully, but they were delayed by this so-called love, and both of their foundations were damaged. One of them was looking for self-pity at the sorrowless lake, while the other came to the Dalan temple to find me, the Sakra of the demon realm, to find a way to cut off their feelings. Ha 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 ha, what happened to them in the end? One was suppressed by me under the frowning tower, never to be reincarnated, while the other died on the misty peak, never to enter the 6 paths of reincarnation. But, after all, they had loved before. Zhang Xiaohua was infuriated. She moved her divine sense, and a few rays of sword light pierced towards Ya, aiming at Ya's head, which was not covered by the demonic flag. Haha, you're finally willing to do it. Ya laughed. If you kill me, you'll never see your dream. The small sword was like lightning, piercing Ya's face. But, just as the flying sword touched Ya's face, the demonic flag quietly extended upwards, covering Ya's entire face, blocking the small sword. Zhang Xiaohua did not expect to succeed like this. At the same time she used the flying sword, she reached out her hand, wanting to take out the Hao Tian mirror, but the Hao Tian mirror was connected to the other 9 instruments. Zhang Xiaohua was in a hurry, she could not take it out. Left with no choice, Zhang Xiaohua took out the Sangharama plate beside her. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua take out the Sangharama plate, Peacock gritted her teeth. She did not know what to feel. Although she had already guessed that Great Elder Jing Gang was killed by Zhang Xiaohua, she did not want to admit it. Zhang Xiaohua could not care less. She held the Sangharama plate in her hand, made a gesture with her right hand, and vital energy was emitted from her fingertips. Then, she pointed at the plate, and from the Sangharama plate, a ball of light blue brilliance appeared, and a wave of turbulent sound was heard. Then, Zhang Xiaohua gritted her teeth and pointed her finger. The brilliance was like a water column, directly covering Ya's head. Haha, you laughed. You're just a cultivator in the qi refining stage. What can you do? This little bit of congenital water is not even enough to wash my feet. Sure enough, you did not move at all. When the congenital water column as heavy as a mountain fell, he waved his sleeve, and a faint black gas was emitted from the demonic flag, turning into a faint black lotus, which was supported by the light blue brilliance. Although the water was turbulent, it could not smash down no matter what. Next, Zhang Xiaohua did not hesitate. He took out the dragon binding hoop and tossed it into the air. The dragon binding hoop grew in the wind, and flames appeared around it. It turned into a hoop that was about 10 feet wide and covered Ya's head. These are just some toys, but they are just for me to play with. Ya had a faint smile on his face, and he did not activate the demonic flag. He only pointed his hand in the air, and a red light flashed, hitting the dragon binding hoop. With a Kong sound, the light on the dragon binding hoop was extinguished, and the flames were extinguished. With a Pu sound, Ya fell from the air. Humph! Zhang Xiaohua snorted coldly, and took out 2 purple phoenix hairpins, one in each hand, and sent all her true qi into the 2 purple phoenix hairpins. Kacha! Kacha! 2 thunderous sounds came from the 2 purple phoenix hairpins, and in an instant, 2 bolts of lightning were emitted from each hairpin. These 2 bolts of lightning were different. The one in the left had a golden glow, and the one in the right had a white glow. When the 2 bolts of lightning flew out of the purple phoenix hairpins, they immediately absorbed the yuan qi of heaven and earth from the surrounding air, and continuously expanded. When the 2 bolts of lightning flew closer, countless tiny bolts of lightning were formed between the 2 bolts of lightning, and when they flew to Ya's head, they had already formed a net of lightning that was sizzling. This purple phoenix hairpin is the token of love between Yu Ming Xian and Yang Hao Ya. How could this lord not have seen it before? If the 2 of them were to use it, perhaps this lord would be somewhat afraid. Although you've already tried your best, it's a pity that your cultivation is too weak. The purple phoenix hairpin's power is really like the light of a firefly. When you saw this, he didn't seem to be nervous at all. He only casually flicked his finger, and another red light struck the center of the net of lightning. Boom! Countless bolts of lightning were quickly annihilated by the red light, and in a breath's time, they were annihilated. There was still a small wisp of the red light, and it didn't stop there. It went straight for the purple phoenix hairpin in Zhang Xiaohua's hand. Zhang Xiaohua frowned, and immediately put away the purple phoenix hairpin. She then took out another item, and it was the small seal that she had obtained earlier. Zhang Xiaohua threw the small seal into the sky, and it immediately expanded and turned into a huge rock and directly smashed down on Ya's head. Haha, little lover, I'm afraid. You don't have anything good in your hands. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua throw out the small seal, Ya almost laughed out loud. He pointed his finger, and the seal immediately spun in the air and fell from the sky. However, Zhang Xiaohua really had a lot of things in her hands. Before the small seal fell, she took out another item from her bosom, and it was the so-called Seven Wonders tree. Hee hee, little lover, you really have a lot of treasures. Unfortunately, this Seven Wonders tree belongs to the Buddhist sect. Can you control it? You sneered. Bang! The crimson light hit the wonderful tree of 7 treasures. Zhang Xiaohua's hand trembled, and then his chest trembled. He didn't know how you did it. She couldn't control her body anymore, and the 7 Wonders tree in her hand fell in the direction of Zhang Xiaohu and the rest. Zhang Xiaohua's body was in midair, and the blood in her chest was boiling, and a mouthful of blood rushed up to her throat. When she landed beside the lotus throne, she could only calm her blood, and a small stream of blood still seeped out from the corner of her mouth. Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohu saw Zhang Xiaohua vomiting blood, and immediately panicked and called out. As for Peacock and Chen Shun, when they saw that there were traces of golden blood on Zhang Xiaohua's body, they were shocked. Ha ha ha, how is it? You laughed wildly, with the demon flag. Even though I have less than 30% of my previous cultivation, but here, there is no one who can defeat me. As he spoke, a condensed divine sense was released from Ya, and it swept towards Zhang Xiaohua with extreme fierceness. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. The divine sense was extremely dense and heavy. Her divine sense was similar to Ya's, but she was just an infant boy who didn't know how to walk. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the dreamlike face. No, you was a dream. She opened her eyes wide, gritted her teeth, and reached her hand into her chest again. Just now, she couldn't control the Haotian mirror, and it should be because of the 10 magical items in the pouch. But now, other than the Haotian mirror, Zhang Xiaohua only had a few pearls and a few gourds, and she didn't know how to use them. Thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua took out the Haotian mirror. It seemed that the Haotian mirror was unwilling to appear, and in Zhang Xiaohua's hand, it was as heavy as 10,000 pounds. Ah? Kunlun mirror. When you saw the Haotian mirror, his eyeballs almost fell out, and he pointed at Zhang Xiaohua in disbelief. You? When did you see Xiaohua? Is he here too? As he spoke, his eyes didn't stop looking around. His divine sense also spread out in all directions. Zhang Xiaohua didn't give her time to think. Although he didn't master the first level of the Haotian mirror, and the Haotian mirror didn't listen to him, he still poured his true energy into the Haotian mirror as if it didn't cost money. After receiving his true energy, the Haotian mirror gradually emitted a faint brilliance, and the surface of the mirror gradually became blurry. You looked around and didn't see the so-called immortal Xiaohua, so she was relieved. Then, she looked at Zhang Xiaohua's method of pouring his true energy into the Haotian mirror and laughed. Little husband, I think you haven't seen Xiaohua, and your mirror isn't the Kunlun mirror. Xiaohua's Kunlun mirror isn't something that a chi-refining kid like you can control. But then, she tilted her head and said, but why do you look so similar to Xiaohua? Also, you haven't seen Xiaohua, but you can actually disguise yourself as him? It's really strange. Hee, but if this mirror is really the Kunlun mirror, then can I escape into the void at will? While they were talking, the Kunlun mirror shone brightly, as if something was about to rush out. But you didn't seem to panic, and he only scanned Zhang Xiaohua's surroundings with his divine sense and laughed again. Don't use your strength, little husband. If this isn't the Kunlun mirror, even if you can use it, you can't do anything to me. But if it is the Kunlun mirror, it is one of the 10 heaven-opening treasures, which can only be used by immortals. You are just a mortal. How can you control it? Why don't you leave a little bit of your true chi, and we can sit down and have a good chat? Before he finished speaking, the Haotian mirror dimmed again, and Zhang Xiaohua felt a huge force coming from the Haotian mirror, which hit her dantian. An incomparable discomfort gushed out from her body, and with a puff, she spat out a mouthful of essence blood, which fell on the Haotian mirror. With a whoosh, the Haotian mirror shone brightly, and a huge suction force came from the Haotian mirror, which swept away all the true qi in Zhang Xiaohua's body like a whale swallowing water. With a buzz, the Haotian mirror trembled slightly, and suddenly, a misty light shot towards Ya. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua spit out a mouthful of blood on the Haotian mirror, Ya felt something was wrong. As soon as the light came out, he immediately flashed, and several black phantoms appeared in front of Zhang Xiaohua. The light of the Haotian mirror hit the phantoms, and all the phantoms were shattered into pieces, revealing Ya in midair. Kunlun mirror. Is this really the Kunlun mirror? Ya still didn't believe it, but his body didn't slow down. The light of the Haotian mirror was like a maggot in a tarsal bone, and wherever Ya flew, the light would follow. So what if it's the Kunlun mirror? After flying for a while, Ya's face turned cold, and he landed on the ground. With a wave of his hand, the demonic flag was pulled out from his body, and he threw it in midair, which was in front of the light. With a puff, the light hit the demonic flag, and the black gas on the demonic flag surged, and it instantly disappeared like a snowflake that was doused with hot water. Ya looked at the demonic flag with great heartache, and the black gas on it gradually dimmed. Fortunately, the light of the Haotian mirror also gradually dissipated. When the light of the Haotian mirror completely dissipated, Ya let out a long breath and landed in front of Zhang Xiaohua. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua from head to toe, and the expression in his eyes was extremely strange. You. Who are you? How did Xiaohua's Kunlun mirror fall into your hands? Zhang Xiaohua looked at Ya, and she had already put the Haotian mirror into her purse. She sneered and said, "Of course I am me, and I don't know who Xiaohua is. This mirror is called the Haotian mirror, and not the Kunlun mirror that you mentioned." Ah, it really is the Kunlun mirror. Ya's face was filled with excitement, but his face was also extremely puzzled. The Kunlun mirror is an honorific name for the Haotian mirror, and this mirror is the Haotian mirror. As he spoke, his face turned cold again. I don't care how you know Xiaohua, you better quickly hand over the Kunlun mirror. An unparalleled divine sense attacked Zhang Xiaohua, but just when the divine sense touched Zhang Xiaohua, the divine sense suddenly stopped and quickly retracted. The red color in Ya's eyes gradually dimmed, and Meng actually came out again. Xiaohua, I'm afraid that I can only see you for the last time. I have something that I always wanted to tell you. If I don't say it, I won't be able to die in peace. Although Meng didn't have any cultivation, under the support of the devil flag, she also floated in the air. At this moment, how could Zhang Xiaohua still care whether she was Meng or Ya? She reluctantly used the last of her true energy to fly to Meng's side. Xiaohua, don't despise me. As Meng spoke, she stretched out her hand and grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's hand. Although my consciousness has the seed of Ya, my heart and my body love you. I know. Zhang Xiaohua nodded with tears in her eyes. Actually, Xiaohua, I feel that I'm quite lucky. You didn't know how many saintesses' consciousnesses before, and each of them was only a few years old. Those saintesses had never tasted the taste of love, and I'm very grateful to God for arranging for me to meet you in my inevitable ending, and to have a mutual love with you. Although, this love is just the effect of the heart-binding curse, but, Xiaohua, it is the real love between us. Love is love. No matter how it appears, if it exists, then it exists. Even Ya, she can't deny it. Zhang Xiaohua opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but she couldn't say anything. Meng held his hand again and said, I've always wanted to help you in times of need, but unfortunately, I'm afraid our promise won't come true. However, perhaps it's more suitable for us to forget each other in the pugilistic world. Since it's better to forget each other in the pugilistic world than to help each other in times of need, then Xiaohua, let's forget each other in the pugilistic world. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua's hand tightened, and Meng's eyes began to turn red again. Quick, Xiaohua, there's no time. I feel that I'm getting weaker and weaker. If you don't do it while I'm still alive, you'll never have the chance to do it again. If you can't live, how can we forget each other in the pugilistic world? If you can't kill Ya, then Who in the world can stop her? This. I'm afraid everyone in the world will be killed by her as a sacrifice to the flag? Meng's eyes gradually turned red, and Meng's face was filled with reluctance and desperation. Zhang Xiaohua gritted her teeth, and chasing dream turned into countless sword lights, stabbing towards Meng's throat. However, just as the flying sword was about to pierce Meng's throat, the demonic flag extended upwards, blocking the flying sword, and the flying sword couldn't pierce any further. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked, and her divine sense moved again, attacking Meng's head. However, the demonic flag covered the entire head like before, and the flying sword couldn't enter. Ha ha ha, you finally appeared, and grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's hand. What an affectionate husband, but what kind of intimate method is this? The flying sword was useless, and it flew towards Zhang Xiaohua again. Zhang Xiaohua saw Chasing Dream, and her eyes lit up. She reached out with her left hand and grabbed it. Then, with the nameless sword skill, she stabbed towards Ya's throat. The strange flow of energy from her left arm flowed out from a mysterious place, and it flowed into Chasing Dream along her arm. Hee, with such a small sword, how can it hurt me? Ya was extremely disdainful, and like swatting a fly, he swatted the small sword away from his throat. Zhang Xiaohua didn't stop there, and she stabbed towards Ya's heart. Little sweetheart, don't tell me. You want to get physical now? Ya smiled and puffed out her towering chest. However, before she could say another word, Chasing Dream had already stabbed Ya's chest. The demonic flag's black fog churned, and a red light flashed. But, with a poochit sound, the demonic flag that the flying sword couldn't pierce was pierced through by Chasing Dream. Just as Ya was still smiling, Chasing Dream stabbed into her heart, and the flow of energy flowed into her heart. This? Ya's face was pale, and she said in disbelief, You? What kind of magic weapon is this? Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to answer. Chasing Dream in his hand had pierced an extremely hard spot. As the energy flowed in, that extremely hard spot immediately exploded, releasing an extremely strong force and quickly hit Chasing Dream. Chasing Dream, or should it be called Chasing Dream now, instantly turned into powder, and purplish red blood flowed out from Ya's heart and immediately flowed onto the demonic flag. The demonic flag absorbed Ya's blood, and a red light flashed again. Ya was shocked, and she hurriedly used her heart technique, wanting to heal the wound in her heart. Unfortunately, that mysterious flow of energy had already destroyed Ya's heart. No matter what method Ya used, the blood in her heart continued to flow out, and her heart was gradually destroyed along with the flow of energy. Ya pointed at Zhang Xiaohua and wanted to use her magic power to kill her, but it was too late. In just a moment, the demonic flag gradually fell off from Ya's body, revealing Ya in purple robes. Xiaohua, you finally succeeded. The red light in Ya's eyes receded, and the dream came out again. She smiled and said, I will never see you again in the future, but you finally hit Ya's vital point. Ya no longer cares about devouring me. She is looking for a way to save herself. After that, the dream looked at the snowflakes that were still fluttering in the sky, and the red clouds in the sky, and said sadly, This is leaving? Am I going to leave this world just like this? But to be able to accompany the man in my heart for so long, I'm already satisfied. Xiaohua, do you think there is really immortality in this world? Yeah, she is so heartless. What is the meaning of living for so long? If there is some elixir of immortality, I won't use it myself. If you want to use it, let's use it together. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He flew forward and held Ming in his arms. He took out the longevity pill from his money bag and held it in front of Ming's eyes. He said sadly, Perhaps this is what you call the elixir of immortality. This? The dream felt strange and reached out to take it, opened the bottle, and looked at the pill inside. But then, a strange smile appeared on her face, and she shook her head slightly. I know this thing. From Ya's memory, this seems to be an extremely precious beauty pill in the cultivation world. After taking it, you can keep your face at that time for the rest of your life. Ha ha ha. The dream's eyes turned red again, and Ya said, This kind of pill is a woman's favorite. I can still get it when I am about to die. Then, let me take it." After that, Yu was about to put the beauty pill in her hand into her mouth, but just as her hand was about to reach her mouth, she stretched it out again and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua's mouth. The dream said, "Xiaohua, you can eat it. I hope you can keep your current appearance and not change even after 100 years. Wait, wait for my next life. I will come and find you again." The dream's eyes just stared at Zhang Xiaohua's face, as if she wanted to imprint his appearance deeply in her heart, and even reincarnation could not erase it. Zhang Xiaohua's nose was filled with tears, and he sniffed the sweet fragrance between the dream's fingers. He put the beauty pill in his mouth, and it melted as soon as it entered his mouth, and turned into a medicinal power that went into his stomach. By the way, Xiaohua, Ye has destroyed the sheepskin scroll in the dense forest just now, but I know that she did not destroy the previous one. She hid it in. The dream seemed to think of something again, and whispered a few words in Zhang Xiaohua's ear. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua was very sad, so how could he care about this? Although the blood in the dream's chest was flowing slowly, it was still flowing. Zhang Xiaohua knew that when the blood stopped flowing, it would be the time for the dream to leave, and he would never be able to see the person he loved again. Their fingers were interlocked, and their eyes were looking at each other. For a long time, they did not speak. Suddenly, the dream's face was full of shock, and he pushed Zhang Xiaohua and said, "Xiaohua, quickly go. Yo is staking everything, to die with you." Then, the dream looked deeply at Zhang Xiaohua for the last time, and used his left hand to pull Zhang Xiaohua's head over, and deeply kissed Zhang Xiaohua's lips, and said with a smile, "I guessed the process, but I did not guess the ending. This process will forever be engraved in my heart. Xiaohua, wait, in the next life, I will love you again." As she spoke, she waved her hand and tightly grasped the demonic flag before closing her eyes. Meng's expression started to change. First, it was pain. Then, it frowned. After that, it started to emit lights of various colors. In the end, Meng's figure suddenly flew up into the sky. With a bang, she exploded and the demonic flag was blasted away. "Dream!" Zhang Xiaohua shouted and flew into the air and reached out to grab the demon flag. But besides the disappearing bloodstain on the flag, there was only the ring Zhang Xiaohua gave Dream. At that moment, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt a popping sound in his heart. It was as if a lock had been unlocked, and the key to the lock was in the air in front of him. Zhang Xiaohua froze for a moment, then seemed to understand. He opened his left hand and released all of the divine sense in his Naiwan palace into his delirium dharma eye. When the silver-white eyes opened, Zhang Xiaohua could clearly see that Meng was floating not far from him. Next to Meng was Ye, who looked exactly like Meng, but was pitch black, had horns on her head, and had a pair of wings on her back. Zhang Xiaohua didn't have time to think and chased after Meng. However, just as he was about to catch up, a pitch-black crack opened beside Mengya, and the two of them were about to enter the crack. "Dream!" Zhang Xiaohua shouted and reached out his right hand to grab Dream's hand. Dream seemed to sense it and turned to look at Zhang Xiaohua. It was a pair of large eyes, thick eyebrows, a dimple, and a beauty mark. The end of the book, November 24th, 2011, 22:53. -4. Chapter 11:35. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua raised her eyebrows again. She seemed to look outside and instructed, "Xiaohuaji, there's an announcement outside saying that a distinguished guest has come to visit. Go and welcome the guest on behalf of Master." Xiaohuaji was stunned. She put down the things in her hands and nodded. "Yes, disciple will go out now." Shui Tianyuan, on the other hand, stared at Zhang Xiaohua with wide eyes filled with disbelief. He then turned his head to look at Ji Xiaohua's back. He was extremely envious and wanted to follow him to take a look. Although O Yin and the others were surprised, they didn't show it on their faces. They only tidied up the things in the room slightly and glanced at the door from time to time. Not long after, Xiaohuaji walked in with a few people. They were Zhang Xiaohua, Hu Yuni, Li Jin, Du Feng, and Ding Chao. Du Feng and Ding Chao were holding various gifts in their hands. Their faces were also filled with surprise and disbelief. Hu Yuni and the others entered the room. They only took a glance before walking to Zhang Xiaohua. They bowed and said respectfully, "Greetings, Immortal Elder. I've received Immortal Elder's kindness and have specially come to thank you today." As he spoke, he waved his hand. Du Feng and Ding Chao presented their gifts. Hu Yuni continued, "I've asked gang leader Zhang this morning. I know that Immortal Elder has a noble character and doesn't like worldly things. It's difficult for me to find immortal things in a short time, so I've taken out the calligraphy and paintings that I've collected for decades. I hope Immortal Elder doesn't dislike them. This is also a small token of my appreciation." Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed when she heard this. She waved her hand and said, "Elder who is too polite, I have a deep relationship with your sect. I'm sure you've heard the reason from my second brother. Helping Elder who was just a matter of convenience. Elder whose politeness makes it seem like I have ulterior motives. No, it's just a small token of my appreciation. It's really not enough to show my respect. I hope Immortal Elder can give me some face and accept it," Hu Yuni said in panic. "Xiaohua, these are all Elder Hu's own things. He has been looking for me since a long time ago. He is very sincere. You should just accept them." Zhang Xiaohu knew that Zhang Xiaohua liked gold and silver and might not understand the value of these paintings, so he immediately reminded her. This. Zhang Xiaohua listened and nodded. "Since it is Elder Hu's kind intention, then I will accept it. I can't let Elder Hu's face fall to the ground." "Thank you, Senior Immortal," Hu Yuni said with a smile. "Oh Yin, take these things." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said to Oh Yin, "Yes, head senior brother." Oh Yin answered in a low voice and stepped forward to take the calligraphy and painting from Du Feng and Ding Chao's hands. When Hu Yuni and the others saw Oh Yin in the room, they thought that she was just sitting there idly. Hearing her address Zhang Xiaohua as senior martial brother sect leader, they couldn't help but feel surprised. Hu Yuni couldn't help but ask, "Yinzi, you?" Oh Yin took the calligraphy and painting first. She looked at Hu Yuni and Li Jian with a face full of smiles and said, "Big brother, second brother, thanks to Senior Immortal for accepting me as a disciple of Beidou School a few days ago. Although I am a disciple of an immortal, I still call him Senior Martial Brother." When Hu Yuni and Li Jian heard this, they were both surprised and pleasantly surprised. Oh Yin was Oh Peng's younger sister and the only blood relative he had left in the world. Hu Yuni and Li Jian naturally had to take care of Oh Yin carefully so that they wouldn't let down the dead Oh Peng. Now that they heard that Oh Yin, who couldn't practice martial arts, was actually a disciple of an immortal, who would dare to bully Oh Yin in the future? How could they not be happy? Hu Yuni bowed again and said, "Thank you for your kindness, Senior Immortal. I thank you on behalf of my dead fourth brother." Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, "Elder Hu, you should sit down first. You repeatedly bowed and thanked me as soon as you entered the room. I really feel uncomfortable." Elder Hu, Elderly, Vice Hall Master Du and Vice Hall Master Ding, please take a seat. Zhang Xiaohu stood at the side and greeted. Xiaohua had already brought some chairs. At this time, Hu Yuni and Li Jian were already seated. Only Ding Chao and Du Feng walked to Zhang Xiaohua and bowed. "We didn't know that it was Senior Immortal who helped us on Shixin Peak. So, we have always misunderstood Senior Immortal. Moreover, we have offended you on Shixin Peak. Please forgive us." Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "I'll say the same thing again. I'm fated to meet Ethereal Sect. Since I've arrived at Shixin Peak and saw that you are the elites of Ethereal Sect, I've been delighted for a long time. Since I can help you, I'll naturally help you without thinking too much. I only hope that you will be loyal to Misty School in the future and make Misty School more famous than before." Ding Chao and Du Feng's faces turned serious and they said in unison, "Senior Immortal's kindness is like giving us a new life. Although we are slow-witted, we also know that in the future, we will follow sect leader Zhang's lead and carry forward Misty School's orthodoxy." "Good." Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands and said, "In this way, I did not waste my efforts." "Haha, Deputy Hall leaders Ding and Du are the outstanding young disciples of Misty School. Your future is limitless. Please sit down." "That's right. Elder Hu, how are your injuries?" Zhang Xiaohua asked with a smile. Thank you, Senior Immortal, for bestowing the medicine. The poison in my body has already been removed yesterday. This morning, I asked the medicine hall's elder to take a look, and there was nothing left. As for the injuries in my meridians, under the effect of Senior Immortal's medicinal pill, I have already healed 30% in one night. If nothing unexpected happens, I should be able to fully recover in 2 days. Hu Yuni said, unable to conceal the joy in his voice. That's just right. I was afraid that this medicinal pill was wrong. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, although the injuries in Elder Hu's meridians are serious, it's mainly because you overworked yourself these past few years and didn't properly recuperate. As for I's medicinal pill, it's actually somewhat wasteful. Hu Yuni stared blankly and asked curiously, what do you mean, Senior Immortal? Zhang Xiaohua said mysteriously, if Elder Hu's meridians heal and then refine the residual medicinal power with his internal strength, something surprising will happen. Senior Immortal's meaning is, Hu Yuni had also taken the qi-generating pill, so how could he not understand? He immediately thought of saluting. Zhang Xiaohua promptly waved her hand and asked, also, I still want to ask, Shui Yuping's corpse, how should we deal with it? Hearing his master's question, Shui Tian unconsciously perked his ears and listened carefully. Hu Yuni sat down again and took a deep breath. He slowly calmed his excited mood and said, I came here today to report to Senior Immortal. This morning, I already discussed it with gang leader Zhang. Vice gang leader Shui Yuping was resisting the invasion of the Righteous Tao Alliance and risked her life to pursue them. However, she mistakenly fell into the Righteous Tao Alliance's ambush and unfortunately fell. This is my Misty School's great loss. So, my Misty School wants to give her a grand funeral. Grandmaster. Shui Tian heard this and ran out a few steps. He knelt in front of Hu Yuni and cried, many thanks. Grandmaster. AI, this child, why are you thanking me? If you want to thank someone, you should thank gang leader Zhang and your master. Hu Yuni scolded, but his hand lovingly stroked Shui Tiantian's small head. Shui Tian heard this and indeed turned his head, wanting to thank Zhang Xiaohu and Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, one is your master, the other is your second martial uncle. What's the point of thanking them? In the future, it's better to cultivate properly and not waste the kindness of your master and your second martial uncle. Shui Tian was quite obedient. His face showed unswerving determination as he nodded and said, many thanks to master and second martial uncle. This disciple will engrave these in my heart. Hu Yuni and Li Jian said a few more words. The two looked at each other, and Hu Yuni turned his head to Zhang Xiaohu and said, gang leader Zhang, this old man has a few things to ask Senior Immortal. I hope gang leader Zhang won't take it to heart. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned, and then he smiled and said, Elder Hu, please ask. If it's not convenient, I can also leave. Hu Yuni waved his hand and said there was no need. Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, Elder Hu, what is it? This. Hu Yuni hesitated before he said, Senior Immortal is an expert in the path of immortality. Naturally, you know that our Misty School was a sect of the path of immortality 10,000 years ago. But later on, the inheritance of the path of immortality has been lost. Since Senior Immortal can help gang leader Zhang set foot on the path of immortality, then, can you also find the inheritance of the path of immortality of our Misty School, so that our Misty School can continue to pass on the path of immortality of our Misty School? Of course, this request is a little too much. However, Immortal Elder is also the younger brother of the sect leader of Ethereal Sect. We can only be thick-skinned and make this request, Li Jian said with a smile. Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohua was amused. It turned out that Hu Yuni and Li Jian still didn't quite believe Zhang Xiaohu's words. They thought that Zhang Xiaohu's path of immortality was the same as Du Feng and Ding Chao's, which was why they asked Zhang Xiaohua to help them find the inheritance of the Misty School. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua laugh, Hu Yuni and Li Jian secretly complained, thinking that Zhang Xiaohua was unwilling to help. Just as they were about to speak, they heard Zhang Xiaohu say with a smile, Elders, regarding this matter, you don't have to ask Xiaohua anymore. A few days ago, He already gave me the inheritance of the path of immortality of our misty school. Ah? Li Jian and Hu Yuni were pleasantly surprised. Is this true? Yes, it is, Zhang Xiaohua added. I have already entered your misty palace and inheritance pavilion, and I also told second brother how to enter and exit. Ah! Hu Yuni was really overjoyed. Oh, right. I didn't take any of the things in your misty school's inheritance pavilion. If you don't believe me, you can ask your gang leader. He also went in to take a look. In the future, I won't be able to enter that place, so you don't have to worry. Zhang Xiaohua said again. I'm just surprised. I don't doubt Senior Immortal's intentions. Hu Yuni quickly explained. Xiaohua is telling the truth. I've already checked the second floor of the inheritance pavilion. There's nothing missing. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, also, I saw the portrait of our Misty School's founder, Yang Haoya, on the first floor of the inheritance pavilion, and I entered the Dao through it. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Thank you. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote monthly and recommend at Chidian. Com. -4. Chapter 1136. Zhang Xiaohu then recounted what had happened in the inheritance pavilion. Finally, he said, I have received great favor from martial ancestor Yang and have stepped onto the path of immortality. I will definitely pass down the teachings of Misty School's path of immortality. However, the situation in Jianghu right now is dangerous. My Misty School is being watched by the Incense Cult and the Righteous Path Alliance. Before I am 100% certain, I cannot reveal this matter. Otherwise, it will lead to the destruction of our sect. In the future, when I have the opportunity, I will choose some of my Misty School's talented disciples and secretly pass down the path of immortality to them. All right. After hearing Zhang Xiaohu's words, what else could Hu Yuni and Li Jin say? At this time, the Misty School was not only theirs, but also Zhang Xiaohu's. How could he not consider passing down the teachings of immortality? Also, the two elders need not be too worried. I once promised martial ancestor Yang that my Beidou School and Misty School will be eternal friends. In the future, my Beidou School will definitely not leave the legacy of Misty School alone. Zhang Xiaohua comforted them. Then, he slapped his head and said, You still say that? Come. I will introduce you to my Beidou School's disciples. Hu Yuni and Li Jian both nodded. However, Zhang Xiaohua's first sentence almost made the two of them fall to the ground. Go, bring your eldest senior brother here. This was Zhang Xiaohua's order to Xiaohuaji. As expected, Hu Yuni and Li Jian didn't know whether to laugh or cry when they saw Zhang Byron, who didn't say he was 3 or 4 years old. They didn't know what to say, but when they saw Zhang Xiaohua's calm and collected appearance, they could only nod and congratulate him. After that, Zhang Xiaohua introduced his two disciples, Ji Xiaohua and Shui Tiantian, as well as his 3 junior sisters, Nie Qianyu, Zhang Pinger, and O Yan. Finally, he smiled and said, Of the 7 disciples of my Beidou School, there is only one left. It should be Chu Jing from Dragon Mountain. I have already asked second brother to send someone to pick him up, but I don't know why he hasn't returned yet. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. Dragon Mountain is very far from here. It's impossible to return in a short period of time. I have already sent the elite disciples of the Divine Engineering sect. Don't worry. Zhang Xiaohua shook his head slightly. The situation in Jianghu right now is unpredictable. The immortal abode on Mount Yaoshan is about to appear, and various forces are gathering around Mount Yaoshan. The journey may not be peaceful. I can't rest assured, so I still need to make a trip. By the way, Immortal Elder, since you mentioned Immortal's residence in advance, is it because of the rainbow glow on Mount Yao? Hu Yuni suddenly asked. Yes. Zhang Xiaohua knew what Hu Yuni wanted to say. He said, I have already warned second brother that your Misty School shouldn't interfere. Hu Yuni was very curious. Just as he was about to turn around and ask Zhang Xiaohu spoke himself. Elder Hu, elderly, I also heard from Ancestral Master Yang about the Yaoshan Immortal Abode. Xiaohua wants to establish a sect on Yaoshan Immortal Abode and build his Big Dipper sect on top of the Immortal Abode. Of course, Little Blossom said that he wants to snatch the Immortal Mansion, but he might not be able to. My ethereal sect naturally has the qualifications to snatch it. I won't give this opportunity to him just because he is my younger brother. But the Tenryu sect has already attracted all the sects in Jianghu, regardless of their size. Just by looking at the news from the Divine Mechanics Hall, the Dalan Temple, the Incense sect, the Alliance of the Righteous Path, Between the Clouds and the Water, the Fallen Stars Alliance, and the Canopy Dock have all turned out in full force to try their luck. Although we haven't received any news from the Tenryu sect, will they not come? Elder Hu, do you think it's better for my Misty School to conserve my energy and gain a firm foothold in Jianghu? Or do you think it's better for my Misty School to cultivate the Immortal's legacy and restore my reputation as a great Misty School? Or to compete with the other sects in Jianghu to snatch the Immortal's residence? When Hu Yuni and Li Jian heard about the rainbow-colored glow, they were also filled with passion and wanted to bring their disciples to try their luck. Now that they heard about the Immortal's residence, it wasn't something that could be easily obtained. With the Misty School's current strength and the power that had been declining for thousands of years, it was impossible for them to snatch it. If they hadn't obtained the Immortal's legacy, Hu Yuni might have tried to persuade them or even cooperate with Zhang Xiaohua. But now that they knew that they had obtained their own legacy and saw the dawn of the Misty School's revival, they naturally didn't want to give up their own legacy to snatch the Immortal's chestnut. Hu Yuni nodded and said, "Sect leader Zhang is right. Nowadays, the disciples of the Misty School can't differentiate between the good and the bad. The former disciples of the Incense Cult, the former disciples of the Righteous Alliance, the Misty School disciples that I brought, and the former disciples of the Misty School, we haven't even figured out our own situation yet. So how can we have the time to look for trouble? Moreover, if we bring these disciples over, the Incense Cult and the Righteous Alliance might just shout, and these disciples will all return to their sections. Won't we go for wool but come home shorn? Since Elder Hu can see it so clearly, I don't need to explain. I was afraid that Elder Hu would misunderstand that I had given the Immortal Mansion to Little Blossom for personal reasons because of my brother's matter. Of course not. Li Jian also laughed and said, "Everyone in Jianghu has seen the Immortal's residence, and it doesn't belong to Immortal Zhang alone. To be honest, the Incense Cult, the Righteous Alliance, the Dalan Temple, and the Tenryu sect are all stronger than the Beidou School. Whether Immortal Zhang can come out on top, it's really hard to say." Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "Isn't that the case? If I don't snatch the Immortal's residence, the Beidou School won't have a place to set up its sect. When that happens, the Misty School will have to help I." Haha, that's a must. The Misty School and the Beidou School are good friends forever, so we can't not help, Hu Yuni and Li Jian said in unison. They almost grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's hand and asked him to merge the Beidou School with the Misty School. The people of the Misty School had a long talk with the disciples of the Beidou School led by Zhang Xiaohua. They reminisced about the past entangled grievances and looked forward to the bright and beautiful future. Only then did they bring the original chief disciple of the Misty School, Shui Tiantian, to take care of Shui Yupeng's funeral. They bid farewell to Zhang Xiaohua and left the Huanxi villa. After the people of the Misty School left, Zhang Xiaohua looked at Oyen and said, "Junior Sister O, what Elder Hu said is indeed reasonable. I was too conceited before and wanted to take the Immortal's residence as the foundation of our Beidou School. But now that I think about it, although I have the cultivation of the path of immortality, I'm still far behind Shurdai Jingyi and Elder Hu, not to mention Sakura. Moreover, there are many people from the Shangjiao sect, the Dalan Temple, and the Tenryu sect. We only have 8 people. Even the Misty School has to think about this matter. I'm afraid we'll have a hard time. Therefore, we still have to plan for both sides. I'm not familiar with the geographical location, and I even get lost when walking. This kind of thing still needs to be handled by you." Oyen smiled and said, "Senior brother sect leader, this matter is naturally handled by me, so you don't have to worry about it. Actually, I've already been looking around. If there's a suitable place, I might as well buy it with some money." Buy it with money? When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was a little stunned. Then, she smiled and said, "Junior Sister O, I was just joking when I said that I would buy you a place with money. Our Beidou School started off as a path of immortality. If we were to build it in a densely populated place, where would we find the chi of heaven and earth to cultivate? You'd better Or I'll look for my second brother and ask him to pay attention to a place with beautiful scenery." Yan's face was a little red. She knew in her heart that she didn't have the aptitude for cultivation. Zhang Xiaohua accepted her as a disciple out of gratitude, and also because she valued her ability to deal with things. She had misunderstood the first thing that Zhang Xiaohua told her, so she immediately stood up and said, "I understand. I misunderstood senior brother's meaning and delayed senior brother's matter. It's all my fault. I'll do as senior brother said." Why would Zhang Xiaohua think so much? He had picked up too many scraps in the past. This immortal mansion, he also treated it as a magic tool and wanted to steal it. He even shamelessly told Zhang Xiaohua that he valued this thing and that the Misty School shouldn't get involved. Now that she thought about it, she realized that she had overestimated herself. There were many heroes in Jianghu, and there were many capable people, not to mention the Incense School and other Path of Immortality sects, who could guarantee that there wouldn't be Zhang Xiaohua in the other Path of Immortality sects in Jianghu. She thought about how she had always been hiding behind others, pretending to be a pig to eat an elephant. Maybe there was someone she couldn't see who had the strength to fight with her. Therefore, when she heard Yin blame herself, Zhang Xiaohua quickly waved her hand and said, "What are you talking about? I'm just..." Sigh. "I didn't think it through and put all my eggs in the basket of a mortal mansion. How can I blame you for this? Anyway, our Beidou school will always be the same when it opens. Don't worry, take your time to find it. We'll talk about it when we find a suitable place. Hee, this place is pretty good. We don't have to pay. If we can't find it, we'll just cultivate here." Hee. Nie Qinyu laughed and covered her mouth, saying, "It's better to go to Rejuvenation Valley here. Once senior brother sect leader reveals his identity, father can't wait to give senior brother sect leader. After she finished speaking, her face turned red. Beside her, Zhang Pinger glared at her for no reason. The meaning in her eyes was obvious. Hee, there's no need for that. At the very least, we'll go to Dragon Mountain. That's Chu Jing's home. It's also the place of a Path of Immortality senior. Since they decided not to use Immortal Mansion as the first choice for Beidou School's opening, Zhang Xiaohua put the matter of Immortal Mansion aside. He stood up and said, "Out of the 7 disciples of Beidou School, we're still missing one. Master has a feeling that there's something wrong with that little disciple you haven't met yet. Master will go and take a look." "Yes, senior brother sect leader. Don't worry." Yin and the others smiled and said, "We'll definitely do a good job with the opening of the school. When senior brother sect leader returns, we'll give him a surprise." Zhang Xiaohua understood how they felt. However, he had only gone to Dragon Mountain and back for 10 days. What could he have done? He didn't point it out and only smiled as he walked out of the room. -4. Chapter 11:37. When Zhang Kai and Guosufei heard that Zhang Xiaohua was going out again, they couldn't help but worry. However, when they heard that she was going to look for the last disciple of the Beidou school and that the disciple might be in danger, they couldn't help but urge Zhang Xiaohua to leave quickly. Zhang Xiaohua bade farewell to her parents and bid farewell to Zhang Xiaolong, Lu Qian, and Mr. Lu before flying off. At this moment, Little Black and Little Yellow couldn't stand it anymore. They flew to Zhang Xiaohua's side and shouted in Zhang Xiaohua's heart that they wanted to leave with her. How can this be? Just as Zhang Xiaohua was thinking in her heart, Little Black shouted, "Why not?" Bad. Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes and said in her heart, "Little Black, Little Yellow, what do you think is the most dangerous place right now? What kind of person needs the most protection?" How would the two of them know? They could only shake their heads vigorously. I'm sure the two of you know that a legendary item is about to be born. All the bad guys in the pugilistic world are running to our house. Don't you think our house is the most dangerous place right now? The two of them looked at each other and nodded slightly. However, they still shook their heads slightly. Furthermore, look, there's Byron, Xiaohuaji, and our parents' parents. These are all the people you have to protect. Oh, that's right, from now on, you will be the guardian beasts of my Beidou school. Furthermore, the two of you have grown up. From now on, you will have to bear the responsibility of guarding the Beidou school. Our parents' Beidou school will be handed over to the two of you. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't explain whether she was the father or the mother. She just called herself father and mother. In any case, it was fine as long as the two of them knew. As expected, when they heard Zhang Xiaohua say that they had grown up, the two of them flew happily in the air. They wanted to show off their growth. When they heard that they were going to be divine beasts in the future, they became even more spirited. They cried out loudly and flew to the walls of the courtyard. They looked around vigilantly and ignored Zhang Xiaohua. After comforting the two little things, Zhang Xiaohua turned around and looked at the four people standing in the courtyard. She nodded slightly and formed a hand seal. Then, she soared into the sky and gradually disappeared from sight. The eyes of Nie Qianyu and the others were full of envy and longing. After Zhang Xiaohua flew away, they all went back to their rooms and immersed themselves in cultivation, hoping that one day they could also fly so freely. Yao Mountain, which was located to the southwest of the Misty Mountain Villa, could be said to be filled with undercurrents. It was already autumn, but for some reason, the weather in Yao Mountain was extremely abnormal. Not only was there no autumn wind, but there was also a gentle breeze that made people feel warm, as if it was spring. On Yao Mountain, because of the mild weather, the grass and trees on the mountain did not wither and were as lush as before. Moreover, because of the increasingly rich qi of heaven and earth, the green color was almost dripping. In the eyes of ordinary people, it could only be seen in astonishment. However, in the eyes of the people of Jianghu who came from all directions, it was more and more confirmed the previous rumors. It had been more than 2 months since the seven-colored light appeared on Yao Mountain. All the sects in Jianghu that had some ideas had all turned out in full force and sent all their elites to the vicinity of Yao Mountain. Even the previously hesitant sects could no longer remain calm when they heard the rumors in the Jianghu. From the beginning, there was the appearance of an immortal's magical treasure, to the appearance of a heaven-shaking magical treasure, to the appearance of an immortal's cave, and even the appearance of a passageway to the heavens. Those sects that were slow to react changed their previous laziness and sent out all their disciples, wanting to fight for a piece of the pie in this peerless opportunity. Forget about the passage to heaven. Just hearing the news of an immortal's cave, there seemed to be no one in this world who could remain calm, not to mention that there was a passage to heaven. Thinking about it, it made sense. If it was a magic weapon, one could certainly command the wind and the clouds in Jianghu and become the most powerful person in the world. However, if one invested too much in a sect and a sect with ulterior motives suddenly attacked one's nest, the loss would outweigh the gain. However, if it was an immortal's cave or a passage, it was a different story. If one seized the immortal's cave, one sect would be an aristocratic family with an immortal's cave. Why would they still need their previous sect? Or if they and their disciples had all passed through the passage, they would no longer need to care about this mortal world. In fact, there were people in Jianghu like Hu Yuni, Zhang Xiaohu, and the others who were calm and collected. However, everyone else was like that. If you did not go, you would not have the opportunity to become an immortal in Yao Mountain. Then who would not go? Therefore, they scrambled to be the first to surround Yao Mountain, which had a radius of more than 10 miles, so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Of course, although it was so packed that not even a drop of water could trickle through, and although all the sects in Jianghu had come, there was still a distinction between those who came first and those who came first. To the south of Mount Yao, in an area roughly half a kilometer in circumference, there was a thin line that surrounded the area. There were many disciples inside, as well as many tents. Outside of the line, there were various heroes of the Jianghu, whose faces were filled with displeasure. However, none of them dared to cross the line, because the disciples inside the line were none other than between the clouds and the water, who had been in the limelight at the Wulin assembly of the incense cult. At this moment, in the center tent of the camp between the clouds and the water, Bai Yinxia was sitting on a chair with an angry expression. In front of the chair, there were more than 10 people standing. Who is it this time? Who is it? Who leaked the news of the immortal's cave in Yao Mountain? Bai Yinxia could not help but scold. The tent was very quiet. There were 3 white-haired people with ruddy complexions. The old man with the temperament of an immortal was sitting closest to Bai Yinxia with his eyes closed, ignoring him. Liang Cangshu and the others looked at each other without saying a word. Li Su, I am talking about you. How are you going to manage Huiming Hall? You can't even find out this little bit of information? Bai Yinxiu pointed out. The big-mouthed Li Su had no choice but to brace himself and step forward. He smiled apologetically and said, reporting to sect leader, this subordinate, since I received sect leader's order to arrange for the elite disciples to come to Yao Mountain, I have already warned them not to leak any information, otherwise they will be killed without mercy. Didn't sect leader also see it? It has been a long time since the martial arts assembly of the incense cult, and no one knows about the matter of between the clouds and the water in Yao Mountain, right? Moreover, after the 7 colored rays appeared in Yao Mountain, this subordinate knew that it was impossible to hide the matter. So I immediately ordered my disciples to spread the news of the immortal's magical instrument appearing in Yao Mountain. First, it was to warn others that it was an item of the immortal's path, and it was useless for martial artists like you to obtain it, so it was better for them to obediently stay in their own homes. Second, it was to show that the immortal's path sects would definitely go there, and it was normal for between the clouds and the water to appear. Third, it was to conceal the matter of the immortal's cave, and to confuse the incense cult and the Dalan temple. You have done a good job in this matter. This sect leader is very satisfied. When the immortal's cave is in my hands, I will definitely reward you. Bai Yinxiu nodded. But the immortal's cave was a message from the founder of Between the Clouds and the Water. No one in Jianghu would know about it. Why did the immortal's cave spread in Jianghu? How is this possible? Li Su thought for a moment, then smiled. Sect leader, perhaps you were thinking too much. There is no lack of people in Jianghu who have strange ideas. Didn't you hear it? Now it has become a passage to the immortal's world, and as long as one can pass through this passage, everyone will become an immortal. Doesn't this also cover up the immortal's cave? Bai Yinxiu scolded. This is even worse. If it was the immortal's cave, I am afraid that only people from the big sects would be able to pass through. Now that it has become a passage, anyone with some skill in Jianghu would want to join in the fun. This subordinate doesn't know who leaked the news? Li Su lowered his head, but suddenly his eyes lit up. Was it Ren Xiaoyao from the incense cult? Bai Yinxiu nodded at first, then shook his head. Ren Xiaoyao knows about the immortal's cave. If it was before the martial arts convention, he would definitely have reported it to Abbess Jingyi. But I heard that Ren Xiaoyao has an affair with Zixia and Zixia. Bai Yinxiu paused for a moment, then said, Zixia is an important person in another sect. Presumably, she is no longer in the incense cult. Whether or not Ren Xiaoyao is in the incense cult is 2 different things. Would he have told Abbess Jingyi? No matter if he told the incense cult or the other sect, they would be like me between the clouds and the water. They would make a fortune in silence. Who would let the whole world know? Sect leader, could it be that immortal? Liang Cangshu probed. Him? Bai Yinxiu still shook his head. No, that person. I am not sure which sect he is from. If he knew, he would have come himself. How could he let others know? Absolutely impossible. Alas, forget it. Even if he knew, what could he do? Now that the whole Jianghu is here, 7 out of 10 stops have come. That person's trick has already succeeded. Even if he is found, it will be useless. Bai Yinxiu waved her hand with an indifferent look on her face. Then, she sneered and said, How can those evil people know that I have planned in advance? When I between the clouds and the water unknowingly get the immortal's cave, let me see their sorrowful faces. By the way, Li, have people from the incense cult, the Dalan temple, and the Righteous Alliance arrived? Sect leader, between the clouds and the water came early and occupied the south side of Yao Mountain. The Dalan temple Shinrong sect occupied the north side of Yao Mountain. Now they have set up camp, but the defense is very tight. There are also immortal techniques. My Huiming Hall's disciples can't see the scene. I don't know if Master Changsheng and the others have arrived. Changsheng, Changgung, and Changxing are here. One of the 3 old men who had been silent with his eyes closed opened his mouth. Not only them, even Yuandao, Yuanming, and Yuanwu are here. Master Yuandao and the others are here too? Bai Yinxiu exclaimed. The 3 of them are still alive? Haha, since the 3 of us are still alive, it's normal that the 3 of them are alive too. Another old man said. Then, Bai Yinxiu regained his composure and smiled. With Master Hao Yun, Master Hao Yu, and Master Hao Feng here, who would between the clouds and the water be afraid of? Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 11:38. The last old man opened his eyes and said coldly, the Dalan temples Yuantian, Yuandao, Yuanming, and Yuanwu were famous in Jianghu back then. They were the famous four protectors of the Dalan temple. For the sake of the Shindao sect's legacy, we didn't dare to show our faces. How could we have any reputation? Even if we stood in front of the people of Jianghu, no one would know. Haha, Taoist Master Hao Yun's words raise the prestige of others and destroy your own morale. Bai Yinxiu smiled like a flower and said, if Taoist Master Hao Yun says that you are the mysterious cultivator who seriously injured the Dalan Temple's Master Yuantian decades ago, then who in Jianghu wouldn't know? Haha, hearing this, Taoist Master Hao Yun's face showed a smug expression. Seriously injuring the Dalan Temple's abbot and then dying without treatment was one of his earth-shattering achievements in his early years. He couldn't help but feel proud. It can't be that much. Master Yuantian's cultivation is very high. Back then, he underestimated me, so I took advantage of him. Although Yuantian died, I was also injured and will need to recuperate for several years to recover. Taoist Master, you are too modest. Wait until our sect destroys this immortal mansion and our name shakes the world. That will be the day you can hold your head high. It's all the world of you young people. What hope do we old people have? If it weren't for the importance of this matter, why would we be willing to come out? Taoist Master Hao Feng waved his hand and thought for a moment before asking, in this martial assembly, did you see Abbess Shu Qing and Abbess Shu Jia? Bai Yinxiu's face showed surprise again, but then he covered his mouth with his hand and sighed. I heard that the two elders of the incense cult passed away a long time ago. Could it be that they were like the Dalan Temple's Master Yuandao and the others, and also cultivated in seclusion? By Zhang Min. Although you have stepped into the path of immortality, the mysteries of the path of immortality are far beyond your current cultivation. The immortal Tao was different from the martial Tao. It could only temper one's inner strength and increase one's cultivation. One could flaunt one's bravery in the pugilistic world and be in the limelight for a period of time. When one cultivates the immortal Tao to a high level, not only can one overturn rivers and seas with a raise of one's hand, one can even prolong one's lifespan. Then, wouldn't they all become immortals? Bai Yinxiu was somewhat disdainful, but his face was still respectful. If what Hao Yu said is true, then where did the people of the Tao of immortality go? Sigh. The world has changed and vital energy has been annihilated. We cultivators of the immortal Tao have lost the foundation of our existence. How can we live forever? Taoist Master Hao Yu sighed and said, what I just said is only the phenomenon of the cultivation of the Tao of immortality reaching the pinnacle. But even our Shindao sect's founder, Wan Wuxin, did not reach such a realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had to use a primordial spirit projection to pass down his Tao teachings. What level is the primordial spirit projection at? Bai Yinxiu asked curiously. I don't know. Taoist Master Hao Yu shook his head. Maybe it wasn't the pinnacle of the realm in ancient times, but now, it's already the cultivation of an immortal. Then, as one's cultivation of the Tao of immortality deepens, will one's lifespan also increase? Bai Yinxiu probed. Exactly. But how can an ordinary cultivation have such an effect? That's why my fellow disciples, the 3 monks of the Dalan Temple, and Shu Qing and Shu Jia of the incense sect all quietly cultivate, hoping to break through the realm and prolong our lifespan in one fell swoop. 3 Taoist masters, this disciple, has disturbed your cultivation. I hope you can forgive me. Bai Yinxiu hurriedly got up and bowed. It's fine, it's fine. Taoist Master Hao Yu waved his hand and said, the immortal mansion is a matter of great importance. Even if you didn't say anything, we would have left the mountain. What do you mean? Bai Yinxiu asked curiously. The immortal mansion, who knows what's inside? How can we not be curious about something that even ancestral Master Huan covets? Even if we can't take back the immortal mansion and make it the foundation of our Shundao sect's inheritance, as long as we can get the ancient Tao of immortality pills inside, we might be able to break through our current bottleneck and advance our cultivation to the next level. Taoist Master's lifespan will also increase? Correct. Taoist Master How You continued. If there's some kind of immortal pill that can prolong one's life, we only need one. Wouldn't all our problems be solved? Life-prolonging pill? Bai Yanxiu exclaimed. Does the immortal mansion really have such a legendary pill? Maybe, maybe not. But as long as there's a chance, who would give it up? Taoist Master How You laughed. That's right. Taoist Master is right. Bai Yanxiu's face flushed red. He raised his head and asked, Li, what about the Righteous Alliance and incense cult's actions? Li Su was listening to Bai Yanxiu and the three Taoist masters talking. He didn't expect to be suddenly asked, as if he didn't hear it at all. Not only Li Su, but even Liang Zhangshu and the others were intoxicated. It was as if the legendary thing was about to happen to them. Li? Bai Yanxiu asked discontentedly. I'm asking you. Oh, sect leader. Li Su came to his senses and hurriedly replied. What I heard was really unimaginable. I've learned a lot. Please forgive me, sect leader. Haha, it's all right. Not only you, but even I was enlightened after hearing Taoist Master's words. I know the importance of the immortal mansion this time. Fortunately, I had the primordial spirit projection of Ancestor Huan to remind me between the clouds and the water, so I got the upper hand. The chances of getting the immortal mansion or entering the immortal mansion in advance have greatly increased. When the time comes, as long as there are benefits, all of you will be my disciples between the clouds and the water. How can I leave you out? Thank you, sect leader. Li Su and the others were overjoyed and bowed to thank him. There's no need. Li, what about the incense cult and the Righteous Alliance? Sect leader, the Righteous Alliance came a little late. They've set up camp on the west side of Yao Mountain. There are about 200 disciples now. I heard that the several thousand disciples of the Righteous Alliance who stayed at Misty Peak were all captured by the disciples of the Misty School. None of them escaped. Zhang San suffered such a big loss at the hands of the incense cult, but he didn't go looking for trouble with the incense cult or the Misty School. That's strange. Sect leader, if it weren't for the immortal mansion, I'm afraid Zhang San of the Righteous Alliance would have flipped out long ago. However, the several thousand disciples didn't lose their martial arts or their lives. Zhang San only has to spare some time in the future to kill them. Isn't he afraid that the Misty School's Zhang Xiaohu won't hand over the several thousand disciples? Li Su laughed. Li is right. The Misty School took advantage of the immortal mansion incident. Bai Yanxiu nodded. Oh right, what about the Misty School? Didn't they come to Yaoshan with the incense cult? According to the disciples' report, everything in Misty Peak is normal. However, about 10 days ago, the exiled Hu Yuni brought another group of disciples of the Misty School back. I think the disciples of the Misty School are now racking their brains over who should be the leader of the Misty School. That's right. In Misty Peak, the disciples of the Misty School led by Zhang Xiaohu, the disciples of the Misty School led by Hu Yuni, and the disciples of the incense cult led by Ming Qing. Yes, there are also several thousand disciples of the Righteous Alliance who were captured. These people are in a mess. How can they spare the energy to come to Yaoshan? Perhaps only when the incense cult's Abbess Jing graces them with her presence can they completely suppress them. Not necessarily. Abbess Jingyi said that she won't interfere in the Misty School's matter anymore. If she interferes, she will give herself a reason to do so. In the Jianghu, there are many cases of men stealing and women prostituting themselves. Abbess Jingyi is just burying her head in the sand. Who doesn't know this? Sect leader is wise and far-sighted. I think the Misty School has also received orders from Abbess Jingyi to bide their time and not make any moves. Who cares? If they don't come, it's because there are fewer opponents. Yes, they can't be called opponents. They're just a nuisance. Bai Yanxiu waved his hand as if he was shooing away an annoying fly. Then, he smiled apologetically at the three immortals and asked, Immortals, please enlighten me. The two abbesses of the incense cult, Shu Qing and Shu Jia, What are their cultivations? This was the question that Bai Yinxiu was most concerned about. Immortal Hao Yun and the other two looked at each other and shook their heads. The incense cult has been hiding from the world, and Shu Qing and Shu Jia are both older than us. They also entered the path of immortality earlier. Their current cultivation. If there are no accidents, they should be above us. It's just that they haven't broken through the bottleneck, so they're all Qi refinement cultivations. There's no essential difference. When Bai Yinxiu heard this, he frowned slightly. Just as he was about to speak, a divine sense descended from the sky like a waterfall and swept past the tent that Bai Yinxiu and the others were in. Sakura? Immortal Hao Yun frowned and asked curiously, Tenryu sect. How did they come so quickly? However, the divine sense seemed to have sensed something and immediately swept back. It actually scanned the bodies of Taoist Hao Yun and the other two several times. You're going too far. Immortal Hao Yun was furious. Even if you're the most powerful person in the world, you can't do this. No, Immortal Hao Yun, this isn't Sakura. Bai Yinxiu suddenly shouted. Disciple has seen Sakura's divine sense in the incense cult. It didn't seem to be this strong. A nameless immortal expert? The four people looked at each other, their eyes full of astonishment. Their figures rose into the air and flew straight out of the tent. Zhang Xiaohua left the misty mountain villa. She originally wanted to go straight south and look for Chu Jing along the way to the Dragon Mountain. However, after flying for a while, she felt a little reluctant. Reluctant about what? Needless to say, it was the immortal mansion on Yao Mountain. This was the Beidou School's foundation that Zhang Xiaohua had identified early on. She wanted to put the immortal mansion into her pocket before between the clouds and the water. However, after careful consideration, she knew that this immortal mansion wasn't something that she could swallow in one go. How could she feel at ease? She unconsciously changed her mind and turned around to fly to the west. Far away from Yao Mountain, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense saw Lu Town, Bao Town, Pingyao Town, Nanyang Town, Ninjiao Town, and so on. They were all filled with Jianghu people. Every street and alley was filled with people holding shining swords and spears. Ordinary people closed their doors tightly and peeped outside. No one dared to go out easily. Sigh. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but scratch her head. -4. Chapter 11:39. Although Yaoshan was about 100 li away from Lu Town, it was only half a day's journey in the eyes of the people of Jianghu. They didn't dare to follow the super sects between the clouds and the water, the incense cult, and the Dalan temple and set up their camps close to Yaoshan. They also couldn't follow the super sects and set up camps around them like the Falling Stars Alliance and the Firmament Dock. Even though it wasn't a long journey, it couldn't stop them from setting foot on the path to immortality. They occupied the towns and villages around Yaoshan and waited for the passage to the immortal realm to appear. Zhang Xiaohua flew very fast and arrived near Yaoshan in a flash. Since he came from the west, his divine sense saw the incense cult's camp first. Sure enough, this was the style of a super sect. The area within half a kilometer had been cleaned up. Some of the outer sect disciples were on duty, some were practicing, and there were even more, supervising some of the craftsmen who had been temporarily recruited from the surrounding towns. They seemed to be building some sort of pavilion or something. Are you kidding me? Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself. We're here to rob the immortal's mansion, not to play. Abbess Jingyi usually doesn't show much extravagance in the incense cult, but now she's talking about extravagance outside. Thinking about how Jingyi poisoned her second brother, Zhang Xiaohua's heart was filled with anger. She thought to herself, when Jingyi comes, should I give her a taste of my own medicine? Then Zhang Xiaohua used his divine sense to look north of Yaoshan. There were many bald monks here, and it was clear that this was the Dalan Temple's camp. The Dalan Temple's camp was very simple. There were idle monks around an invisible area, wandering around from time to time. The people around them were also some distance away. In the camp, the flowers and trees didn't move. Many of the Dalan Temple's monks were sitting on the ground. Next to the camp was a small sect. From time to time, disciples would send things to the Dalan Temple's monks. For some reason, the elders weren't in the camp. Zhang Xiaohua looked around and then used his divine sense to look west. The situation in the west was completely different from that of the Dalan Temple. Although it wasn't as beautiful as the incense cult's camp, many wooden buildings were gradually taking shape. There were huts built against the mountains, small pavilions near the water, and even a square table under a 100-year-old tree. Zhang Xiaohua first frowned when he saw the disciples in the camp dressed in the clothes of different sects, but when he saw the disciples in the robes of the Righteous Alliance gesturing around, Zhang Xiaohua understood that this was the territory of Alliance Master Zhang San of the Righteous Alliance. There weren't any powerful people in the camp, so they hadn't arrived yet. Then, the camp in the south has the most people, and the most well-prepared must be between the clouds and the water. Zhang Xiaohua had already used her divine sense to look around the camp between the clouds and the water. She knew that they had the most people, and that Bai Yinxiu had already made preparations. So she didn't dare to use her divine sense too early. But where's the Tenryu sect? Don't tell me they haven't received news of the appearance of the Holy Realm's residents. Zhang Xiaohua had long forgotten about the matter of the Holy Realm's residents. Now that she had some free time, she threw her thoughts to her dreams. That's possible. The Tenryu sect is a descendant of the devil cult and has nothing to do with the way of immortality. Even if they get the Holy Realm's residents, it might not be of great use. There's really no need for them to get involved in this mess. Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself, but if that's the case, I won't have the chance to see my dreams. Alas, I don't know why I'm always afraid of going to the Tenryu sect. If Sakura finds out about my way of immortality, I don't know what will happen. Maybe it's normal that he won't let me see my dreams. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua felt the invisible pressure from the most powerful person in the world, Sakura. He was also afraid of the difference between way of immortality and way of immortality and way of immortality. It seemed to be a kind of escape, and also a kind of inexplicable, heartfelt worry. Let's not talk about Sakura's attitude first, but what about Dream? I don't know if it's a freak combination of factors or a trick from the heavens. I've never shown my way of immortality in front of Dream, nor have I explained it to her. Dream has always thought that my way of immortality cultivation is useless and that I'm only a person with brute force. If she tells Sakura about this situation, he might take a liking to her. Didn't he say that at worst, he'll give me all his way of immortality cultivation? But what if Dream knows that I'm a way of immortality cultivator? She won't. Won't she choose me? Zhang Xiaohua suddenly became worried about personal gains and losses, and his divine sense naturally swept towards the camp between the clouds and the water. This is... Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept over the central tent, but immediately, his divine sense returned and circled around the tent a few times. Who's this person? He actually has divine sense? He actually has such a high way of immortality cultivation? Oh no, there's actually 3 of them. Zhang Xiaohua's mind turned rapidly, and before he could turn around, he saw 4 people flying out of the central tent. The 3 in front were white-haired old men with ruddy complexions, and the one behind them was the middle-aged, beautiful woman, Bai Yinxiu. Oh no. Zhang Xiaohua saw Bai Yinxiu and immediately knew that these 3 old men must be Bai Yinxiu's teachers. Thinking of the many benefits he had gained between the clouds and the water, Zhang Xiaohua didn't care that he was hiding himself. Without waiting for Bai Yinxiu and the 3 helpers she found to come near, Zhang Xiaohua made a hand seal and immediately changed direction, flying straight towards the south. Alas, a typical case of having a guilty conscience. Sure enough, Taoist Master Hao Yun and the other 2 flew out of the tent. Looking at the empty sky, they swept their divine sense to the place where their divine sense had been just now, but didn't find any trace of a person. They couldn't help but be shocked. They saw Taoist Master Hao Yun standing in the air, respectfully saluting the place where Zhang Xiaohua had been standing. Which fellow Taoist? Can you show yourself for a chat? But Zhang Xiaohua had already left, and the place was empty. Who would answer him? After a while, Taoist Master Hao Yun still didn't get a reply. He waved his hand, and the 2 Taoist masters, Hao Yu and Hao Feng, flew to Hao Yun's side, forming a strange triangle. Then, Hao Yu took out a small hammer from his chest, only the size of a palm, and shouted, "If fellow Taoist doesn't show yourself, don't blame I for making a move." After a while, the small hammer in his hand shook, and he was about to strike when Taoist Master Hao Yun stopped him. Junior brother, don't make a move. That person, I'm afraid he's already gone. It can't be. Hao Feng said curiously. We sensed the divine sense and immediately flew out. But in just a moment, no matter how high this person's cultivation is, it's impossible for him to escape from our divine sense. Hao Feng didn't believe in heresy and swept his divine sense around again. He didn't find anything unusual and then sighed. Which sex fellow Taoist is this? He's actually in such a realm. Could it be that he's already entered? Maybe. Hao Yun was a little disinterested and waved his hand. Let's go down. Many people have already seen us. Sure enough, around between the clouds and the water, many Jianghu disciples had excited expressions on their faces, pointing and gesturing at Hao Yun and the others. Some of them even looked at Yao Shan, their eyes full of enthusiasm. Senior brother? Who could this person be? Hao Feng entered the tent and asked immediately. It's probably Shu Qing or Shu Jie from the fragrance cult. Hao Yun thought for a while and said, such a divine sense, only someone with Sakra's cultivation can have it. If Shu Qing and Shu Jie didn't cultivate with the help of the fragrance cult's array, they wouldn't be able to reach such a realm. Spiritual master. Bai Yinqiu looked at the three people and said tentatively, I've seen Sakra's divine sense in the fragrance cult, and it didn't seem so strong. Could it be Shu Qing or Shu Jie really passed that bottleneck? Hao Yun and the others were shocked. Then, this immortal mansion. We're a little less confident. Hee, senior brother, don't worry. If she really passed that realm, would she suddenly leave? Hao Yu said, I'm afraid she's using some magic tool to strengthen her divine sense. Of course. Hao Yun slapped his forehead and said, I almost forgot about that. The fragrant religion has a unique, secret technique that can expand one's spiritual energy with the help of spirit arrays. This Taoist suffered a loss in the fragrant religion back then, so how could he have forgotten? Junior brother is right. However, this magic tool is a little strange. It can even hide one's body. Even if her body is hidden, do we still have to be afraid of her? Our lightning hammer, lightning all, and heaven-shaking drum are not to be trifled with. If we really fight, we brothers will set up the heaven-shaking thunder array and punish her. Shu Qing or Shu Jie will crush her body and consign her to eternal damnation. All right, since Shu Qing is here, she must be here to scout the situation first. The aroma cult is right behind her. Let's be more cautious and let our disciples scout the situation first. It's better to get things done as soon as possible. Yes, this disciple understands. This disciple will immediately send his disciples. Bai Yinqiu replied with cupped hands. Not to mention that the people of between the clouds and the water thought that Zhang Xiaohua was the grand elder of the fragrance cult and secretly thought of countermeasures. Zhang Xiaohua was as anxious as a stray dog. After flying for a long time, she finally stopped and gently patted her heart. Only then did she realize that she had hidden her body. It seemed that her flying technique was better than the other parties, so there was no need for her to be in such a difficult situation. AI, forget it. Just between the clouds and the water alone has produced 3 people whose cultivation is much stronger than I. What fragrance cult? What Dalan temple? Do I even need to say anything? These people must be the disciples of the upper generation of these immortal Tao sections. The cultivation of the immortal Tao is calculated in decades. How can this poor Taoist reach that level? Even if it's Nanjing Yi or the Grand Elders, I may not be a match for them. How can I compete with them for the immortal mansion? A frog at the bottom of a well, arrogant and ignorant. Perhaps this is the evaluation of I a while ago. Zhang Xiaohua secretly mocked herself. At this moment, another divine sense swept over from the south. It actually directly found Zhang Xiaohua. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 1140. Zhang Xiaohua had concealed his figure and was flying in the air. Just as he was about to take a breather, suddenly a divine sense swept across the sky and locked onto Zhang Xiaohua. Who is it? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. He had concealed his figure, but he didn't expect that the divine sense would still find him. Without thinking, he pinched a spell and flew to the side of the sky. His own divine sense also swept towards the source of the divine sense. Not far away, there were two masked old women in palace attire. They held a phoenix head crutch in their hands and used the levitation technique to fly towards the direction where Zhang Xiaohua had just stood. Oh, the incense cult. Who are these two nuns? Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense had already seen the two old women in palace attire and masks. Looking down, he saw a group of young girls in palace attire. The four people in front were Nun Jingyi, Nun Shuizhen, Peacock, and Chan Chun. Who else could the two nuns floating in the air be? Naturally, they were Shu Qing and Shu Jie, the two grand elders of the incense cult that Hao Yun Zhenren had mentioned. Nun Shu Qing's divine sense occasionally found Zhang Xiaohua, who was concealed in the air. She immediately used her divine sense to lock onto him and called out to Nun Shu Jie. The two of them flew into the air. However, they didn't expect that the other party's divine sense was also so powerful. Not only did he discover them in time, he also saw Nun Jingyi behind them. They couldn't help but be stunned. Just as Hao Yun Zhenren had guessed, they did rely on the instrument left by the ancestors of the incense cult to amplify their divine sense. At this time, their divine sense should be as strong as Sakura's. The strength of the other party's divine sense immediately woke them up. They looked at each other and said in unison, "Sakura?" Immediately, the two of them didn't dare to be careless. One of them took out a small white flag and the other a small whip. Nun Shu Qing unfurled the white flag, and more than 10 snow-white lotuses bloomed around the two of them, surrounding them. However, just as the white flag was unfurled, Zhang Xiaohua had already used the flying technique to escape far away. Even though Nun Shu Jie and the others' divine sense was fast and their divine sense had already locked onto Zhang Xiaohua, the range of their divine sense was limited. Even with the Imperial Wind technique, they couldn't catch up. In their divine sense, Zhang Xiaohua's trace was gradually getting farther away, and they couldn't catch up. However, Nun Shu Qing and Nun Shu Jie were well aware of the Tenryu sect's way of doing things. Although their divine sense didn't detect anything abnormal within a radius of several hundred feet, they were afraid that the person they saw just now had an even more concealment technique. Therefore, they didn't put away the white flag, and Nun Shu Jie's small whip also lightly danced in her hand. Bright red peach blossoms also flashed in the air along with the dance. Even though the peach blossoms were beautiful, when the petals of the peach blossoms rotated, it actually made a ci sound. If a flesh and blood body touched it, wouldn't their skin and flesh be torn apart? After a moment, Nun Shu Qing and Nun Shu Jie looked at each other and nodded slightly. Only then did they put away the white flag and small whip and landed. Nun Jingyi floated up and said respectfully, "Two grand elders, is there something abnormal?" "Hee, it's more than abnormal. I didn't expect Sakura to be hiding nearby. I don't know what he's planning." "Sakura?" Nun Jingyi was stunned. What is he doing here?" Then her expression changed and she said in surprise, "Could it be that he's planning an ambush?" "We don't know. Just now, my divine sense accidentally found an abnormality in the air in front of us. When I looked carefully, there was actually someone hiding in front of us. But that person's concealment technique is very wonderful. I can only see the person, but I can't see the person clearly. I don't even know who that person is." Nun Jingyi's expression changed slightly and she said with some confusion, "Since Grand Elder can't see him, how do you know it's Sakura?" Jingyi, in this world, if it's not Sakura, who else can have a divine sense that can surpass mine? But, Grand Elder, Sakura appeared in our fragrance cult's martial arts convention. This disciple has already told Grand Elder that even though Sakura's divine sense is tyrannical, it's not much different from Grand Elder's divine sense. If Grand Elder's divine sense is added with the nebula chain, it should be more powerful than Sakura's divine sense. This is strange. Nun Shu Qing was shocked. In this world, whose divine sense is stronger than mine and who can fly, other than Sakura of the devil cult, who else can it be? Taoist Panin. Nun Jingyi called out. It's the Taoist Panin who killed Lungting Villa with a sword in Rejuvenation Valley and Class Fuguei with a sword in Misty Peak. Pan in? Nun Shu Qing shook her head slightly and looked at Nun Shu Jia, junior sister. Have you heard of this person's name? No, there are only a few big sects of the immortal Tao, and very few people have stepped on the immortal Tao. To be able to cultivate to this level, how can he be a nobody? If you didn't mishear, then he must be using a fake name. Oh right, Grand Elder. Nun Jing clapped her hands and remembered. The Shendao sect is also an immortal Tao inheritance, but they haven't shown themselves for thousands of years. Who can guarantee that there aren't a few seniors in the Shendao sect who have a similar cultivation level as Grand Elder? Yes, indeed. If it weren't for the martial arts convention showing traces of the Shindao sect, I wouldn't have known that the Shindao sect's orthodoxy has also been passed down. If I'm not mistaken, he's probably an old man from the Shindao sect. But, senior sister, I've never heard that the Shindao sect has a flying technique that's easy to cultivate. Only the Heavenly Dragon sect's flying technique is a different path, and it is possible to achieve great success in the situation where the heaven and earth yuan qi is annihilated. The other sects are the same, and if we can't master the flying technique, then the godly saber sect's people can't either. Forget it, let's go down. Who cares who he is? Yao Mountain isn't far ahead. Once the immortal mansion appears, how can he not show up? We'll just kill him when the time comes. The three of them descended from the sky. Nun Jingyi looked into the distance and asked, Peacock, is there any news from the Misty School? Sect leader, according to the latest news, Hu Yuni has led 2,000 disciples from the Misty School back to the ethereal heights. Not only is Zhang Chengyue's direct disciple Shui Tian, but also the former deputy leader of the Misty School, Shui Yuping. It's just that, for some reason, the ethereal heights is now heavily guarded. Ming Qing, Gao Kunheng, and the others can't even spread the news. This news was spread by the people outside the ethereal heights. Hee, I didn't expect Zhang Xiaohu to be so talented. I couldn't see it at all before. It's good that the Misty School is so strict. We don't know about it, and the Righteous Alliance doesn't know either. We still have Ming Qing, Gao Kunheng, and thousands of disciples from the Wuming Hall. Moreover, thousands of disciples from the Righteous Alliance have been captured by Ming Qing. Presumably, they are now in his hands. Even if Zhang Xiaohu has 3 heads and 6 arms, he can't escape from Ming Qing's hands. As for Hu Yuni, he brought Shui Yuping and Shui Tiantian. It's obvious that he's here to force Zhang Xiaohu to abdicate. How can he tolerate that? I want them to bite each other so that Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng can sit back and reap the benefits. Sect leader, you are wise and far-sighted. Peacock was convinced. However, the matter of the Yaoshan immortal abode is so serious. Yet the Misty School didn't send out any troops. They only sent out some spies to gather some information. Now that the Yaoshan immortal abode is occupied by various sects, the Misty School has lost its geographical advantage. Peacock, think about it. If Zhang Xiaohu really controls the Misty School, leaving Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng aside, when he sees the immortal abode, or the magical treasure of the immortal abode, do you think he will be tempted? Peacock smiled. Zhang Xiaohu is neither a saint nor a deity. Why wouldn't he be tempted? He's now a pawn of the fragrance cult. All he thinks about is how to escape the fate of being controlled by our sect leader. If he can get the immortal abode and the magical treasure, of course, he'll have the strength to contend with our sect leader. This kind of temptation, he should be more eager than other people in the martial arts world. But the Misty Heights didn't make any moves at all. Doesn't this show that it's not Zhang Xiaohu's idea? Nun Jingyi smiled. It's not that Hu Yuni involved him. To resist foreign aggression, one must first stabilize the internal situation, so he has no time to fend for himself. It's just that Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng didn't agree to let the Misty School's disciples get involved without our orders. Don't you think so? Our sect leader's arrangements are marvelous. I have only one word in my heart: admiration. Peacock smiled. Our sect leader, this immortal abode, is it really something that everyone in the martial arts world wants? Qinshin suddenly asked. Of course. There are many treasures in the immortal abode. Maybe we can even find some primordial stones. Won't our fragrance cult's orthodoxy be passed down? Nun Jingyi smiled. Will the saintess of the Tenryu sect come? Nun Jingyi's face darkened, and she didn't answer. Peacock glanced and whispered, "Since Sakura is here, maybe the Saintess will come too. By the way, senior sister, did Ren Xiaoyao go to the Tenryu sect in the end? This guy is really stupid. He even hugged the Saintess of the Tenryu sect. This luck? TSK, I really can't describe it." Peacock glanced and whispered again, "Who knows if he went or not? According to my disciple's report, he disappeared after leaving Dianchi Lake. Maybe he went to Rejuvenation Valley. Impossible?" Chen Shun shook his head. "Zixia is better than Ye Qinyu in both appearance and background. Why would Ren Xiaoyao do something like that? This guy is really cunning. By the way, senior sister, do you think Ren Xiaoyao will come to Yaoshan?" Chen Chen asked. Peacock was flustered and frowned slightly. "How would I know? However, he only has great strength. Now he has learned some skills with a stick. Even if he can be accepted in the martial arts world, but how can he enter the eyes of the big sects? I'm afraid he won't come." "That's right. This guy knows how to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. In such a dangerous place, he can only hide far away." Chen Chen smiled. What Chen Chen didn't know was that the Ren Xiaoyao she was talking about was now hiding behind a huge rock in a valley dozens of miles behind them, gasping for breath. "Please vote monthly. Please vote for recommendation. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for recommendation and monthly. -4. Chapter 1141. Motherfucker. Zhang Xiaohua almost never cursed. Today, he couldn't help but curse. His heart felt slightly better. "I really didn't expect that. I really was sitting in a well and looking at the sky. I really am a toad who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Zhang Xiaohua also felt depressed. He originally thought that his cultivation of the path of immortality was enough to move unhindered in Jianghu. That was why he casually revealed his true identity in front of the Misty School, who knew that not only the three extremely powerful seniors between the clouds and the water, but also the cult of fragrance, which Zhang Xiaohua had stayed in for a long time and made a mess inside. Unexpectedly, two Shirtai who were even more powerful than the old beggar Jingy popped out. What was going on in this world? Before, he couldn't even see half of them. Just one immortal's mansion was enough to attract all the path of immortality experts? Now that he thought about it, Zhang Xiaohua felt a wave of fear. Fortunately, when he was fooling around in the cult of fragrance, he was afraid that Shirtai Jing would find out. He was very careful and didn't attract the attention of Shu Qing and Shu Jie. Otherwise, the cult of fragrance had a formation that isolated the outside world. The two Shirtai could also borrow the power of the formation. Presumably, even if Zhang Xiaohua practiced the flying technique to the extreme, he still wouldn't be able to escape the pursuit of the two Shirtai. Just between the clouds and the water and the cult of fragrance are so powerful. Then what about the Dalan Temple? Just Master Chang Sheng and the great Master Chang Gung alone. I am not their match. Not to mention that they are like these two sects, with a few more great masters coming out. I will definitely run for my life. Right? There's no need to say anything else. As long as the sweeping old monk of the Sutra Pavilion comes out, I will run as far as I can. Alas, this Jianghu. The water is really too deep. Zhang Xiaohua finally breathed a sigh of relief. The path of immortality has so many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Then what about the Tenryu sect, which is known as the #1 sect in Jianghu? Other than the world's #1 Sakura, is there also the previous generation Sakura or Garuda? If any of them come out, not to mention even the cult of fragrance, will avoid them. Forget it. First, I need to regulate my qi circulation. After a while, I need to confirm Chu's news. I'll wait until the 7 disciples of the Beidou school gather, and find a place with beautiful sceneries. Wait until the Beidou school has, Chut find a place. Wait, when my Beidou school S's after I school, I will find a. In just a moment, the vital energy in her meridians had been replenished. Zhang Xiaohua made a gesture with her hands and turned invisible. Then, she soared into the sky and headed straight for the Dragon Mountain. Because she was afraid of encountering another expert of the path of immortality, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to release her divine sense too much. She only flew low and relied on her eyes and senses. Until half a day later, when she felt that she wouldn't encounter another expert, she released her divine sense and sped up her flight. Previously, I used the Flying Technique's concealment spell to hide my body so that others couldn't see me. Although this can't be seen by the naked eye, it can still be discovered by the divine sense. I guess the experts from between the clouds and the water and the cult of fragrance found I this way. It seems that I have to be more careful when encountering such people in the future. Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself, if only I could find a concealment spell that even the divine sense can't detect, that would be great. In the following days, Zhang Xiaohua saw fewer and fewer people of the Jianghu. At most, she would see them in 2s and 3s. It seemed that their martial arts skills were also lax. She guessed that they didn't think their martial arts skills were good enough and didn't intend to steal any treasures. They just couldn't resist the temptation of the passage to the realm of immortals. But along the way, Zhang Xiaohua didn't see Chu Zhigao and his family, nor did she see any disciples of the Misty School. Could it be that something bad has happened? Zhang Xiaohua thought back to what he had been thinking earlier. Seeing that Horned Dragon Mountain was right in front of her, Zhang Xiaohua used her divine sense to cover the entire Horned Dragon Mountain. But after looking around, she didn't see any traces of Chu Zhigao and his family except for a few people who were chopping firewood and hunting. There was also a thatched cottage that had long been burned down in the mountain. Hence, Zhang Xiaohua came to the location of Fire Dragon Immortal's cave and the place where Chu Zhigao hunted. Everything was the same as before. That's strange. Didn't Chu Zhigao return to Horned Dragon Mountain? If he was at Horned Dragon Mountain, then the thatched cottage should have been rebuilt at the place that was destroyed by the fire. But now, it still looks like it was burned down. That means that Chu Zhigao didn't return to Horned Dragon Mountain. Then, the disciples of the Misty School who came to fetch Jing must have missed him. Where could Chu Zhigao have gone? Poyang Town. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly slapped herself on the forehead and laughed. I have been thinking about Horned Dragon Mountain. Chu Zhigao's house in Horned Dragon Mountain had been burned down by the people of Jingle Parting Manor. Furthermore, the head of Jingle Parting Manor had been killed by I. If the people of Jingle Parting Manor came to look for the head of Jingle Parting Manor, they would naturally meet Chu Zhigao. By then, wouldn't Chu Zhigao be captured by them? Hence, I can't stay in Horned Dragon Mountain any longer. If Chu Zhigao went to another place and I could find him, it would naturally be Poyang Town. Sigh. If I had known earlier, I would have made it clear to the disciples of the Misty School. They would definitely return empty-handed. With that thought, Zhang Xiaohua leaped up and flew in the direction of Poyang Town. After flying for a long time, Zhang Xiaohua's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He used his divine sense to scan the area below him. Unknowingly, he was overjoyed. Poyang Town was not far ahead. On his left was the small mountain village that he had gone to look for Ming's birth. Thinking about the kind people in the small mountain village, the kind Mr. Qigong and Lady Jiao, Zhang Xiaohua's heart was filled with warmth. Back then, he didn't bring much money with him. He only left a small amount of money in the wooden house. Now that he had given all the gold, silver, and jewels he obtained from Shichui Mountain and Evil Tiger Manor to Oyen, he still had some scattered money. If he gave these to the people of the small mountain village, it would definitely be helpful to their poor lives. With that thought, Zhang Xiaohua changed his direction and flew towards the mountain range. However, following his memory, Zhang Xiaohua arrived at the mountain range. The lush forest in front of him left him dumbfounded. Is this the place? Zhang Xiaohua was extremely bewildered. Ever since he cultivated God's guidance, divine sense, he rarely got lost. But why did he get lost again today? This seems to be Lady Jia's straw house. How did it become a huge pine tree? And this should be Lady Aya's wooden house. But it has become a grassland. This is really strange. Zhang Xiaohua muttered to himself as he flew out of the forest. This is the place. Isn't the stream still here? Oh, right. Lady Aya's grave is at the top of the mountain range. So, however, when Zhang Xiaohua flew to the top of the mountain, he realized that although this place was about the same size as the graveyard, there were pine trees and strange stones. There was no grave. This is really strange. Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head and thought for a while. Then, he conjured a spell and burrowed into the ground. After a while, he emerged from the ground with a look of disappointment. Forget it. I think I got lost. There is no coffin under this ground. How can this be Lady Anya's grave? After thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua did not want to stay any longer. He leaped into the air and began to search again. However, even if he found the ferry by the river and the cottage at the ferry, and searched back according to his memory, there was still no trace of him. Sigh. No wonder the Tenryu sect couldn't find Lady Aya in this small mountain village. Back then, I was still puzzled. Now, I finally understand the reason. Could it be that there is something strange about this small mountain village? Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself. However, when he thought about it again, the villagers in the small mountain village were all so simple. There was nothing strange about it. Feeling helpless, Zhang Xiaohua went to the array where he found the money bag. There was no snow, and the outside of the array looked the same as usual. However, with Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense, there was a slight fluctuation of vital energy near the ground. It was the same place where the squirrel had drilled through, and where Zhang Xiaohua had drilled into the cave. Could it be that there is something strange inside? Zhang Xiaohua thought and drilled into the array again. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua already had divine sense and didn't need to enter the cave. He just needed to scan the cave with his divine sense, and everything in it was clear to him. It was different from what Zhang Xiaohua had imagined. The cave was the same as before. There was no fluctuation of vital energy in the dark cave. Could it be that the array in this cave has something to do with the small mountain village? Which senior of the immortal Tao placed the jade letter and money bag in this cave for no reason? How did the Shirtai of the fragrant religion know about it? What does this senior have to do with the fragrant religion? Zhang Xiaohua stood in front of the cave and rubbed his chin thoughtfully. However, the immortal Tao was something from 10,000 years ago. If there was a flaw in the array in the cave, who else in this world could know about it? Karma. Even if it is a cause from 10,000 years ago, it can also cause an effect 10,000 years later. If not for this cause that I didn't know about in the past, I might never have known about it in the future. How could there be an effect of me obtaining the money bag and the jade letter? And the cause of me obtaining the money bag and the jade letter, how much effect will there be in the future? The Tao of Karma is indeed a mystery of the Tao of Heaven that is on par with the Tao of life and death. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly remembered that her dream had left the fragrant religion. She had also left the fragrant religion. The Shirtai's grave was left in the fragrant religion. She had sworn that she would personally kill the person who killed the Shirtai. Now that she had no clue, how could she live up to her oath? Perhaps after the Beidou school is built, I will have to make another trip to the fragrant religion. Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. Please tip me. Thank you. -4. Chapter 1142. After coming out of the cave, Zhang Xiaohua did not delay any longer. She followed the path she had taken earlier and headed straight for Poyang Town. However, when she flew over the mountain range, she inadvertently used her divine sense to scan the lonely mountain temple. A strange expression appeared on her face, and then she was furious. She reached into her clothes and took out Chasing Dream. With a wave of her hand, the small sword shot into the mountain temple like lightning. This small mountain temple that had an affinity with Zhang Xiaohua was not as quiet as it used to be. At this time, there were 6 people squeezed inside. It was not appropriate to say that they were squeezed. It was more like a man and a woman were forced into a corner of the mountain temple by the 4 men in front of them. The woman's face was pale, and she covered her chest with her hand. She was lying in the corner on a pile of straw where Zhang Xiaohua had slept. The woman's face was very beautiful, and it was somewhat similar to Qiu Tong's. However, at this moment, Ru Dai's green eyebrows were tightly knitted together. Her watery eyes were slightly protruding, and her small cherry mouth was also open. She kept inhaling with all her might, but the air she exhaled was far less than the air she inhaled. That woman seemed to be on the verge of death. Miss May. The man stood in front of the woman, as if he was helping to fend off the 4 men in front of him. However, the folding fan in his hand and his thin and weak arms showed that he was only a weak scholar. How could he withstand the shining swords? From time to time, he would turn back to look at the woman with concern. The man held the folding fan in front of his chest and scolded, You bully the weak bandits. In order to escape, we ran all the way here. Why won't you let us go? A lean man stood at the side with his hands behind his back. He looked at the scholar and said coldly, You are Li Jinfeng, right? You must know the background of this woman. Since we were able to chase you all the way from Nanjiao town to here, then we must have the Mei family's treasure. You have been running all the way here, so the Mei family's treasure must be nearby, right? Look, Mei Qinglian is already dead. Why don't you hurry up and take out the treasure map? Seeing that I have the same surname as Miss Mei, I will spare your lives. That scholar was none other than the righteous Li Jinfeng. Li Jinfeng's expression changed when he heard the man surnamed Mei's words. He berated, I've only met Miss Mei by chance. I only know that Miss Mei's family suffered a great calamity and had no choice but to escape from Nanjiao town. How could I possibly know about a treasure map? Young Master Li, you're being disloyal by saying that. A fat man next to him said, You've been taking care of Miss Mei along the way. You look no different from a married couple. Why are you saying such things now? If Miss Mei hadn't said anything to you, would you have accompanied her for so long and run all the way from the north to the south? What do you mean? From what you're saying, if Miss Mei doesn't have a wealthy family, I won't take care of a lonely and weak girl like her. Shopkeeper Liu, don't compare your jade artifact shop to this scholar. He has a noble character and will help any girl he sees. That man surnamed Mei glanced at Li Jinfeng and laughed. But when he helps, he'll be helping a poor young lady from a wealthy family. If he didn't run into us, wouldn't he already have a fortune of tens of millions of strings? Old Mei, look at you. What do you think the words coming out of your mouth sound like? What's the difference between what I said? This old Mei and shopkeeper Liu were actually the 2 night walkers that Zhang Xiaohua had met when she was sleeping in the mountain temple. Sirs, the other person said with a frown, Mei Qinglian doesn't seem to have long to live. Shouldn't we save her first? Otherwise, if we can't complete the task the Banner Lord gave us, we won't be able to explain ourselves when we return. What? Brothers, are you worried about my methods? Old Mei sneered. Although we're not familiar with the brothers from Shitsue Mountain, we're all under the Lord's leadership. We've received your message and know the importance of this matter. That's why we put down many things to come and help. If you're not happy, we'll leave now. No, the other man quickly said. What are you talking about, Sir Mei? You're the Lord in charge of the carriage and horses. We're just strong men running errands. How can we have a problem with you? Zhao Hong just wants to finish this task quickly. After all, we've been following this Mei Qinglian for a long time. If we don't quickly take out the Mei family's legendary treasure, our senior brother from Shitsue Mountain won't be able to explain to the commander. Wu Yuantong, I don't want to criticize you. This Mei Qinglian does this every day. Did you see that accident last time? Moreover, this adulterous couple has been fooling around all along the way. I'm afraid they've already told that man about the treasure. If Miss Mei is gone, we'll find young Master Li. Anyway, this place is close to our home. Let's take the treasure home directly. Your senior brother's task will be completed, and my lord will also be rewarded. Don't you think it's a win-win situation? Yes, we'll listen to shopkeeper Liu's instructions. The 2 men looked at each other and nodded. All right, kid. My patience is limited. You'd better tell me the location of the treasure so that you won't have to suffer some physical pain. In the early years, there was a martial arts family nearby. Yes, their surname was Tan. However, I don't think you know that there was a young man in the family who was as stubborn as you. However, Grandpa shaved off his entire body and used a small knife to make 18,000 small cuts. Then, he smeared honey on the wounds and threw him into the sun. Then, he caught 100,000 little ants to play with him. In just the time it took to brew a cup of tea, this little brat had confessed everything. Do you want to play with him too? When Li Jinfeng heard this, his whole body trembled. Then, He clenched his teeth and stiffened his neck. A soldier can be killed but not humiliated. You're so cruel. There will be retribution. Retribution? Hee, young Masterly, you'd better think about whether you can survive today. Shopkeeper Lu was a little impatient. He took a step forward and stood in front of Li Jinfeng. He raised his hand and pressed on Li Jinfeng's major acupoint. Li Jinfeng fell down. An unbearable feeling welled up in his heart. Immediately, Li Jinfeng's face turned pale and his teeth creaked. On his forehead, bean-sized beads of sweat slowly dripped down along his temples. Young Masterly, how do you feel? Shopkeeper Lu asked coldly. However, before young Masterly could reply, a white light flashed and pierced Shopkeeper Lu's throat. Shopkeeper Lu didn't notice it at all. When he was about to speak again, a stream of blood flowed out from the wound on his throat. Shopkeeper Lu only felt the pain now. When he tried to cover the wound with his hand, his whole body went limp and he fell to the ground. This is... The youngest Mei was stunned. He blinked his eyes, as if he hadn't recovered from the shock of Shopkeeper Lu's death. The sword light turned back as if it had a mind of its own and flew toward his chest. Flying sword. The youngest Mei was a knowledgeable person. He immediately saw through the mystery. Unfortunately, he could only see through it and couldn't block it. The flying sword flashed and pierced through his armpit. Run! Zhao Hong and Wu Yuantong, who were holding their swords and sabers, suddenly realized something and shouted, "Run!" However, before they could run out of the door of the mountain god temple, two flying swords had pierced through their chests and they fell to the ground. For a moment, the noisy mountain god temple only had the creaking sound of Li Jinfeng gnashing his teeth in pain and the breathing of the four dying people. Suddenly, a green figure flew in from the door of the mountain god temple and appeared in front of Li Jinfeng. It was Zhang Xiaohua, who had rushed over in a hurry. When she landed on the ground, Zhang Xiaohua pressed Li Jinfeng's acupuncture point without hesitation. Sigh. Li Jinfeng heaved a sigh of relief, as if he had just put down a heavy burden on his shoulders. He raised his head slightly, as if he wanted to thank her. However, when he saw the familiar face, Li Jinfeng was stunned. Then, he struggled to get up and speak, but his body was so weak that he couldn't move at all. Young Masterly, don't worry. We'll talk later. Zhang Xiaohua nodded at him and then looked at Mei Qinglian, who was behind Li Jinfeng. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly when she saw that Mei Qinglian's face was similar to Qiu Tong's. She placed her finger on Mei Qinglian's wrist to check her pulse and shook her head slightly. Then, she transferred a strand of vital energy to her. It was obvious that Mei Qinglian's chest was heaving less, and her mouth was opening smaller. Her face was slightly flushed. Thank you, Immortal Elder, Mei Qinglian said gratefully when she saw the sword light and Zhang Xiaohua descending from the sky. Do you have any last words? Zhang Xiaohua nodded. If possible, I can help you. Really? Immortal Elder? Mei Qinglian's eyes lit up. She was puzzled at first, and then said hurriedly, I am from Pingyang City's Nanjiao town. My surname is Mei. My name is Qinglian. Mei Qinglian? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. She seemed to have heard of this name before. My father is the famous philanthropist in Nanjiao town. But Mei Qinglian's voice became weaker. At this moment, Li Jinfeng had already walked over. When he heard Zhang Xiaohua asking for Mei Qinglian's last words, he said softly, Miss Mei, you don't have to say anything else. I already know. Do you mean that you want this immortal elder to help you take revenge? Mei Qinglian's eyes flashed with gratitude. She looked at Li Jinfeng and then at Zhang Xiaohua. She nodded vigorously. I hope that immortal elder will be merciful and go to Shizue Mountain. Save my father and the rest from the bandits who harmed the people. Shizue Mountain? Zhang Xiaohua was enlightened. She immediately thought of what she had heard in Shizue Mountain. Wasn't this Mei Qinglian the miss of the Mei family that Fort Master Qi had mentioned? At that moment, Zhang Xiaohua did not hesitate. She squeezed out a smile and said, Miss Mei, do you have any other last words? This matter. I have already completed it more than a month ago. I have killed all the bandits in Shizue Mountain. Mei Qinglian's face lit up. She asked, then, my father, What about him? If you like this work, you are welcome to vote monthly and recommend it Chidian. Calm. -4. Chapter 11:43. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she looked at Mei Qinglian's face, which had a last burst of energy. She smiled and said, "At that time, I saved many people from the prison. As for whether your father was inside, I do not know." "Very well, thank you, immortal elder." Mei Qinglian smiled and turned to look at Li Jinfeng. Her eyes seemed to be filled with tenderness as she said, "Li Gongzi, you are a rare gentleman. In this world, this concubine only regrets that I did not meet you earlier. I hope that you can and your sweetheart be married to each other and grow old together. This scarf, just treat it as a wedding gift from little sister to you." As Mei Qinglian spoke, she reached for the handkerchief hanging from her waist with great effort. Then, she lifted it up forcefully, wanting to pass it to Li Jinfeng. However, the moment she lifted it up a little, the light in her eyes disappeared. Her hand also drooped down weakly. She could see that there was no breath coming from her mouth and nose. "Miss Mei, Miss Mei." Li Jinfeng was a little emotional as he shouted, "Gongzi Li, Miss Mei has already passed." Zhang Xiaohua patted Li Jinfeng's shoulder and softly comforted him. She then stood up and looked at the already dead shopkeeper Lu and the other 3 men who were barely breathing. She walked over and did not hesitate to use the bewitching finger on them. After a while, Zhang Xiaohua laughed coldly. She stretched out her hand and broke the necks of Mei Qinglian, Zhao Hong, and Wu Yuantong. This Mei Qinglian was actually a subordinate of the Righteous Alliance and was in charge of sending messages. There were also spies from the Righteous Alliance in the Galloping Carriage and Storm Carriage Company. Many of the Righteous Alliance's messages were also sent through the carriage company. Why am I so unlucky? I was just sending a letter home, and I just happened to meet a disciple of the Righteous Alliance. So what if I met him? I just had to meet the Righteous Alliance who needed a huge amount of money. Damn it. When did Ai's character become so unbearable? However, Zhang Xiaohua immediately rubbed her nose and said self-mockingly, "Perhaps my character has become even more heaven-defying. After destroying Shichui Mountain and Evil Tiger Villa, I kept most of the gold and silver that the Righteous Alliance wanted in my belt." Sigh. This Miss Mei is really pitiful. Originally, she had already escaped the calamity of being exterminated, but because she had the Mei family's hidden treasures, she was targeted by Zhao Hong and Wu Yuantong from the Righteous Alliance. However, it's also strange. Why didn't the two of them capture Miss Mei in Nanjiao Town? Why not just directly send her to Shichui Mountain? And of course, such a rare, hard-working attitude. If it wasn't for the fact that those 2 people died so quickly, I would have asked them properly. That's not right. The youngest Mei and shopkeeper Lu were not invited by the 2 of them. It was because the youngest Mei found out about their whereabouts through the disciples of the Storm Carriage Company. That was why he brought shopkeeper Lu along. I understand now. Zhao Hong and Wu Yuantong also had the intention of pocketing the treasures. At least, they didn't have the intention of handing over all of the treasures. Birds die in pursuit of food, and men die in pursuit of wealth. The ancients really didn't lie. Zhang Xiaohua finally understood the crux of the matter. Xiaohua. Li Jinfeng, who was at the side, saw Zhang Xiaohua doing many strange things. He also heard the words of the 3 people before they died. When he saw Zhang Xiaohua raise her head from her deep thoughts, he asked, "Are you the Zhang Xiaohua that I know?" Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "Why are you only asking now? What were you doing just now?" I didn't react just now. But now that I think about it, you actually used that, some kind of hidden weapon to kill all 4 of them. I feel, you can't possibly have such a high level of martial arts. Moreover, there were 4 of them. You didn't even show up, and they were all killed? Li Jinfeng's eyes suddenly lit up as he said with a smile, "Don't tell me that you are the legendary sword immortal." Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes and said, "Young Master Li, were you accompanying young Miss Mei and talking too much? How can I be a sword immortal?" "I think so too, but..." Li Jinfeng nodded. He was in so much pain that he didn't notice that Zhang Xiaohua flew in. At most, I am an immortal Dao expert, Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Immortal Dao? What is that? Li Jinfeng asked curiously. Let's talk about it later. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, let's first bury young Miss Mei. But you have already saved young Miss Mei. How can we bury her without permission? It's better to take her body back. Li Jinfeng disagreed with Zhang Xiaohua. Alas, young Master Li, the bandits of Shizue Mountain are ruthless. How can there be any survivors in their hands? What I said to young Miss Mei just now was just to comfort her. No way. The bandits of Shizue Mountain are still alive. Li Jinfeng was a little indignant again. Xiaohua, you promised young Miss Mei that you must kill all the bandits of Shizue Mountain when you go back. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said, of course, I killed all the bandits and only left these two people. But young Miss Mei, I didn't see her at all. There were no survivors in the dungeon of Shizue Mountain, and there were hundreds of corpses in front of the gate of the mountain stronghold. Some were old and some were young. Young Miss Mei should be among them. Oh, by the way, it seems that young Miss Mei died before she reached Shizue Mountain. Her body was abandoned in the wild. Alas, I see. Young Miss Mei was a well-known good person in Nanjiao Town. She actually fell into such a state. Then, as you said, bury young Miss Mei here. Well, okay, wait a moment. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and went out again. After a while, she came back with a huge coffin. Where did you get this? Li Jinfeng was dumbfounded. He wanted to bury young Miss Mei properly, but the mountain was very high. It was very difficult for them to climb up the mountain. It was very difficult to take the body down or the coffin up, so he didn't tell Zhang Xiaohua. Don't ask. See where the feng shui is good. I'll do it. Okay. Li Jinfeng looked at Mei Qinglian's body, who was smiling, and sighed. He went out of the temple and found a place not long after. It didn't take long for Zhang Xiaohua to find the swords of Zhao Hong and the others. He dug a large pit and buried Mei Qinglian in the coffin. Looking at Mei Qinglian's small grave, Li Jinfeng bowed and said, young Miss Mei, you and I met by chance. I wanted to kill the bandits, but I was powerless. You and I have been running for our lives, and we can be considered friends. I am partly responsible for you being buried here. If there is a chance in the future, I will send your coffin back to Nanjiao Town. Young Miss Mei, you have taken your revenge, so you can leave easily. I hope you can live a happy life in the underworld and don't have to worry about the bandits anymore. Zhang Xiaohua whispered, young Master Li, young Miss Mei was born sick in the heart and lungs. Even if she didn't run for her life, I guess, she won't live for more than 3 years. You don't have any burden. Alas, I know this. Young Miss Mei also told me, but I always felt very powerless all the way. Li Jinfeng said sadly. Strange, young Master Li. Young Miss Mei was chased by the bandits of Shizue Mountain because of the Mei family's treasure. Why did you get involved for no reason? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. Let's go back to Lu Town. I'll tell you slowly along the way. Oh, I still have something to do in Poyang Town. Let's go together. When it's done, we'll go back to Lu Town together. Zhang Xiaohua replied. It's all right. As long as you're with me, what am I afraid of? Li Jinfeng said with a smile. With Zhang Xiaohua following them, it was indeed very convenient. Descending the mountain was also very easy. When they encountered a steep and difficult place, Zhang Xiaohua reached out and lifted Li Jinfeng up. Then, he directly jumped over. At the foot of the mountain, the two of them hailed a carriage and headed towards Poyang Town. In the carriage, Li Jinfeng told her about his encounter with Mei Qinglian. It was also fate. Li Jinfeng was visiting a friend in Nanjiao Town. He met Mei Qinglian, who had just returned from visiting a friend. When she saw the drastic change in her family, she immediately jumped off the carriage and ran away without greeting the maids and servants. Shizue Mountain had placed the Mei family as their main focus and had arranged many disciples around the Mei family. When they saw a luxurious carriage coming to the Mei family, they immediately stopped it. However, when they found that young Miss Mei was not in the carriage, they quickly looked around. Young Miss Mei was like a headless fly. When she saw Li Jinfeng's carriage, she jumped in without thinking. Coincidentally, Li Jinfeng was the only one in the carriage. After leaving the town, young Miss May found a secluded place to get off the carriage. Li Jinfeng naturally reminded young Miss May about her safety. Young Miss May saw Li Jinfeng's refined manner in the carriage and knew that he was a gentleman. She couldn't help but feel dependent on him and quietly told him about her family's situation. The May family was also a big family in Nanzhao. Li Jinfeng had heard of Minister May's good reputation from her friends. When he heard about the May family's misfortune, even though he didn't know who did it, he was furious and felt pity for them. However, Li Jinfeng didn't let his anger get to his head. He knew how serious this matter was, and he couldn't bring the disaster to his family. Therefore, he discussed with Mei Qinglian and decided to settle down in a small mountain village first. They would make plans after finding out the details. Therefore, the two of them pretended to be an eloping couple and hid in a mountain village first. Li Jinfeng returned to Nanzhao town to inquire about the news. When Mei Qinglian got the news that her whole family had been kidnapped by Shi Zuishan, she immediately knew Shi Zuishan's intention. She had the idea of using the treasures at home to rescue her family. But how could she know any Jianghu people? She could only ask Li Jinfeng for help. Li Jinfeng knew Zhang Xiaohu and the entrance to Ethereal Heights. However, at that time, it was unknown whether Zhang Xiaohu was alive or dead, and the Misty School had become the Righteous Alliance. Li Jinfeng naturally didn't know what to do. In the end, Mei Qinglian remembered that Minister Mei seemed to have mentioned that the Mei family had some relations with a martial arts family surnamed Tan. She also remembered the name of the Tan family's residence. Therefore, she decided to go to the Tan family to seek help. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 1144. The Tan family's Misty Rain town was close to Poyang town, but it was far from Nanzhao town. Li Jinfeng hesitated when he heard this, but he couldn't bring Mei Qinglian back to her home in Lu town, nor could he avenge her. He could only accompany Mei Qinglian all the way to the south. There was a saying in ancient times, "A scholar is useless." Li Jinfeng felt that this was wrong. That day, Zhang Xiaohua accompanied Nie Qinyu from 1,000 miles away. That was because Zhang Xiaohua knew martial arts and had the ability to protect himself and Nie Qinyu. That was already a chivalrous act. But compared to Li Jinfeng, she was far inferior. Li Jinfeng was only a weak scholar with a weak body. Going to Misty Rain town alone was already a test for him, not to mention bringing Mei Qinglian along. The hardships along the way couldn't be described in detail. Li Jinfeng's bravery had already moved Mei Qinglian, but she knew her body's condition and her current situation, so she didn't dare to reveal her feelings. Moreover, the two talked along the way and didn't hide anything. They already knew each other well. Mei Qinglian also knew that Li Jinfeng already had a girl named Qiu Tong in his heart. But because fate made fools of people, this girl went to the south a few years ago. Now, it was unknown whether she was alive or dead. Even Li Jinfeng didn't hesitate to tell Mei Qinglian that she was somewhat similar to Qiu Tong. And it was because of this similarity that he helped her so deeply. Li Jinfeng's frankness didn't make Mei Qinglian angry. Instead, she appreciated Li Jinfeng even more. She felt that Li Jinfeng was a magnanimous gentleman. The two went all the way to the south, carefully covering their tracks, thinking that they had escaped from Shichui Mountain. But what they did not know was that this Shichui Mountain was not the same Shichui Mountain. That day, the horse carriage that they had taken from Nanzhao had been a galloping horse carriage. Some of the Righteous Alliance's disciples had already reported their whereabouts to the disciples sent by Shichui Mountain. As they fled for their lives, they had not been able to shake off the Righteous Alliance's pursuit. It was not until they were near Misty Rain town that Mei Qinglian found out that the Tan family had been exterminated several years ago that she began to panic. Then, Zhao Hong, who was following them, also felt that something was wrong. He knew that these two people were not looking for treasures, so he was about to show up and capture them. However, at this time, the news of their following also attracted the attention of the youngest Mei and shopkeeper Liu. They stopped them and asked for details. Li Jinfeng and Mei Qinglian took this opportunity to escape far away. They wanted to hide in the wilderness to avoid the pursuit of the Righteous Alliance. However, they were only ordinary people. How could they outrun the youngest Mei's Qinggong expert? It wasn't easy for them to run to this mountain temple, but they were still easily caught up. Mei Qinglian's body couldn't take it anymore as she had been drifting all this time. She was on the verge of death even before old Mei interrogated her. Sigh, young Master Li, I really admire you. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua really didn't know what to say. Li Jinfeng couldn't even protect himself, yet he still wanted to protect a weak girl he didn't know. If Mei Qinglian didn't resemble Qiu Tong, Zhang Xiaohua wouldn't have been able to find a reason for Li Jinfeng to risk his life like this. There are things that a real man should do, and there are things that he shouldn't do. Since I've encountered such an outrageous matter, even if I have to pay with my life, I'll still take care of it. Even if she doesn't look like elder sister Qiu Tong at all? Li Jinfeng nodded without hesitation. That's right. If you don't care, I don't care, and no one else, then how can there be justice and conscience in this world? Sigh. I've learned something, young Master Li. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt that this Li Jinfeng wasn't just his teacher who taught him how to read. He also had a lot to learn from him in terms of how to conduct himself in life. Oh yes, young Master Li, I have something to tell you. What is it? Li Jinfeng asked, but then he realized something. Is Xiaohu still alive? Zhang Xiaohua nodded and smiled. Of course my second brother is alive, but I want to tell you something else. Something else? Li Jinfeng was stunned, and then his face flushed red. He looked out of the window and said softly, Qiu Tong, is she still alive? Haha, yes. Zhang Xiaohua almost clapped her hands and laughed. My second brother has returned to the ethereal heights in Pingyang City, and elder sister Qiu Tong has also returned to the Huanxi Mountain Villa with O Yin. If you want to see her, you can go to the Huanxi Mountain Villa. Sigh, Li Jinfeng didn't feel happy when he heard this. Instead, he looked melancholy. After a while, seeing that Zhang Xiaohua didn't understand, he said, I'm just a weak scholar. I'm hot-blooded, but I don't have the strength to truss a chicken. How can I be worthy of Qiu Tong? I think Qiu Tong has already found a strong martial artist. I can only wish her well. Young Master Li, look at how jealous you are. Didn't I tell you it's something to be happy about? If elder sister Qiu Tong was already married, I wouldn't have told you. She's still waiting to get married. Forget it. Forget it. After all, they're two different kinds of people. Why do we have to squeeze them together? Li Jinfeng was still shy. Zhang Xiaohua was a little angry. You obviously like Qiu Tong, and you're willing to risk your life for Mei Qinglian, who looks like her. Then why didn't you tell Qiu Tong? If she doesn't like you, then so be it. But what if she likes you too? Won't you miss out on a marriage for nothing? Will you have to bear a grudge for the rest of your life? Even if you go and see her again, you won't be wronged for liking her. Zhang Xiaohua treated Li Jinfeng as her elder brother. She said everything in her heart. Then, she looked outside and smiled. We've just arrived at Poyang Town. It's still very far from Pingyang City. Think about it. Zhang Xiaohua had already entered Poyang Town 3 times. She was very familiar with it. She used her divine perception to scan the town. She didn't panic when she couldn't find any trace of Chu Zhigao. Chu Zhigao had been in the martial world for a long time. In addition, he had the experience of being plotted against previously. If he hid in Poyang Town, it wouldn't be easy for others to find him. However, Zhang Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry. When Chu Jing was mentioned at Huanxi Mountain Villa, he felt uneasy. After rescuing Li Jinfeng at the Mountain Deity Temple, he no longer had the same feeling. Perhaps his uneasiness wasn't because of Chu Jing, but because of Li Jinfeng. But since that was the case, Chu Jing was safe, and there was no need to worry too much. Hence, Zhang Xiaohua found an inn and stayed there. She released her divine perception every day and searched around Poyang Town, hoping to find traces of Chu Zhigao. Although he didn't know why Zhang Xiaohua came to Poyang Town, Li Jinfeng didn't ask much. After listening to Zhang Xiaohua's words these days, he thought deeply and didn't disturb Zhang Xiaohua. Early in the morning, when Zhang Xiaohua released her divine perception, she saw Chu Zhigao quietly walking out of a low house on the east side of Poyang Town. He carried a bucket on his shoulder and seemed to be going outside to fetch water. Haha, Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, I knew that you would show up sooner or later. Even if you don't come out to buy things, you can't not fetch water, right? Zhang Xiaohua called Li Jinfeng and went straight out of the inn to Chu Zhigao's small courtyard on the east side. This was an extremely remote place. The walls of the courtyard weren't high, and the house inside was low. Zhang Xiaohua walked to the door and didn't hold back. She shouted loudly, "Brother Chu, I'm here to find you. Come out quickly." When Chu Zhigao heard the familiar voice, he quickly opened the door and stuck his head out. When he saw Zhang Xiaohua, he couldn't help but smile and said, "Ren Xiaoxia, you. Why are you here so soon?" Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. "You? When did you think I would come?" "Hee, I thought you would come in 2 years," Chu Zhigao said with a smile. When Zhang Xiaohua just introduced Li Jinfeng to Chu Zhigao, a cheerful figure ran out from the small courtyard. When he saw Zhang Xiaohua, he immediately knelt down. It was Chu Jing. He even shouted, "Disciple greets master." This time, Zhang Xiaohua didn't refuse. She nodded and said, "Get up. Master came here specially to find you." Hearing the change in Zhang Xiaohua's tone, Chu Zhigao was overjoyed. At this time, Chu Zhigao's mother also came out. Chu Zhigao shouted, "Mother, Ren Xiaoxia finally accepted Jing as his disciple." "Really? This is true?" When Chu Zhigao's mother heard this, she almost couldn't believe her ears. That day, Zhang Xiaohua only said to wait for the right time. But when would the time be right? This was a big matter that she had always been brooding about. She never thought that just how long had it been. Zhang Xiaohua actually relented. "Ren Xiaoxia, could it be that he found the place to open the sect?" Chu Zhigao's mother probed. "No, not yet. Plans can't keep up with changes. The previous plans were all inappropriate. We still need to plan again." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "However, opening the sect is opening the sect. Accepting disciples is accepting disciples. I have already accepted 6 disciples. Chu Jing is the last one. My sect already has the Big Dipper 7 Star Lords. Thank you, Ren Xiaoxia. No, thank you, Immortal Master, for your mercy. Quick, Jing, aren't you going to greet your master?" Chu Zhigao's mother was so happy that she was about to cry. "There's no need. Jing has already paid his respects. When the sect opens in the future, I'll let them do it again." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and smiled. Then, the group entered the courtyard. Chu Zhigao took out the tea and other things and said embarrassedly, "In order to avoid being harassed by others, I didn't dare to stay on Dragon Mountain anymore. That's why I brought my mother and Jing to move here. This place is really simple and crude. I hope Immortal Master can understand." "Haha, it's okay." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, "You can pack up and follow me to Pingyang City." Chu Zhigao was overjoyed. He stood up and said, "I'll pack up right away. When will Immortal Master be leaving?" "Oh, take your time. I still have some worldly affairs to attend to. However, I'll be back in a few days. Young Master Li is Ai's best friend. I'm afraid that something might happen to him if he stayed in the inn. So, I brought him here. Please take care of him." Li Jinfeng followed Zhang Xiaohua here. He felt as if he was floating in the clouds and didn't know what they were talking about. Now that he heard himself mentioned, he immediately cupped his hands and bowed. "Sorry for the trouble. -4. Chapter 1145. Once he heard that Li Jinfeng was Zhang Xiaohua's best friend, how could Chu Zhigao not be respectful? He immediately stood up and bowed again. After Li Jinfeng returned the greeting, he thought for a moment and said to Zhang Xiaohua, "Xiaohua." But he suddenly remembered that Chu Zhigao had called Zhang Xiaohua Ren Xiaoxia. Didn't that mean that he immediately shut his mouth? Chu Zhigao and his mother were stunned. Then, they lowered their eyebrows, as if they didn't know what was going on. Zhang Xiaohua was attentive and had already noticed. She smiled and said, "Brother Chu, my real name is Zhang Xiaohua. Ren Xiaoyao is just another identity of mine. I didn't mean to hide it. Please forgive me." "It's nothing, nothing. Immortal Master is my savior and my son's teacher. I don't dare to think too much," Chu Zhigao replied hurriedly. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and didn't say anything. Li Jinfeng continued, "Xiaohua, I wonder, where are you going? If it's on the way, why don't we go together?" Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and smiled. "Didn't I tell young Master Li a few days ago? Because I sent a letter home in Macho City, I got into a lot of trouble. Didn't I ask the youngest May in the mountain deity temple? I have a rough understanding of the situation of the Righteous Alliance's carriage companies. Although old May only gave me a verbal account and I don't know who he is, but I must make a trip to the carriage company in Sorrow City and eliminate all the disciples of the Righteous Alliance in one fell swoop. Only then can I vent the hatred in my heart. Is that so? Normally, Li Jinfeng would have persuaded Zhang Xiaohua not to complain for fear of hurting the innocent. But after more than a month of running for his life, Li Jinfeng also knew that violence had to be met with violence. He nodded slightly and said, "Then, go quickly and come back quickly." Chu Zhigao was stunned. He looked at his mother and asked softly, "Immortal Master, are you talking about Macho City, where Rejuvenation Valley is located?" "Yes, you know it?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "That, but based on that, you must buy a good horse. Hee, it's fine." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. "Go ahead and pack up. I'll be back soon. It won't take me a few days." Immortal Master. Chu Zhigao's mother also wanted to say something. "It's a long journey. Why don't we let Zhigao accompany Immortal Master? We can take care of each other on the way." "Ha ha ha." Zhang Xiaohua laughed and stood up. She said, "Since Chu Jing is already under my tutelage and the Immortal Tao is going to flourish soon, I won't hide anything from you. I'll let you see Ai's supernatural powers." After she finished speaking, she made a hand seal and floated away. When she was 3 feet above the ground, she gradually disappeared. Then, a sentence came from midair. "Wait carefully in the courtyard. I will be back in a few days." Immortal Master. Chu Zhigao's mother saw this and fell to her knees. She almost thought that Zhang Xiaohua was an immortal. Li Jinfeng's mouth was wide open, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. Although he knew that Zhang Xiaohua's martial arts were excellent and that she could easily get a coffin from somewhere, he never thought that he, a country boy who was enlightened by the Shuo Wenjiezi, would now have supernatural powers that he could only read about in the legends of immortals. After Zhang Xiaohua left Poyang Town, she concealed herself and went straight to Maochou City. After a few days, she saw a familiar city. At this time, Maochou City was different from a few days ago when Zhang Xiaohua came here. The first time was when Ye Qinyu was fighting for a spouse, and the second time was when Longting Mountain Villa was besieging Rejuvenation Valley. Every time, Maochou City was filled with Jianghu people with shiny swords and sabers. This time, because of the immortal abode on Yao Mountain, everyone who had some ideas went north. There was almost no Jianghu person in Maochou City in the south. A servant of the carriage company? Why is there a new servant? Zhang Xiaohua scanned with her divine sense and found it strange. Sure enough, the servant of the carriage company was replaced by an honest middle-aged man. The previous servant was nowhere to be seen. That's strange. Could it be that guy has foresight like me? Zhang Xiaohua landed in the middle of the carriage and found some time to use his bewitching finger to get to the bottom of things. Oh, so that's how it is. Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly. That servant is no longer a servant of the carriage company. I'm afraid he exposed himself. But since he is in Maochou City, it will be easy to find him. Zhang Xiaohua came out of the carriage company and released her divine sense. She wanted to find the servant in Maochou City. However, Maochou City was filled with people. How could it be easy to find him? Zhang Xiaohua searched for a long time, but she didn't find anything. Forget it. Since I am in Maochou City, I should check on Little Orange's injuries. Zhang Xiaohua then went in the direction of Rejuvenation Valley. In Rejuvenation Valley, it was still spring all year round. In an embroidery room, Little Orange was leaning against the bed. There was an embroidery frame on her body. Her right hand was on the bed while her left hand was holding an embroidery needle. She was embroidering something thread by thread. In a moment of carelessness, her left hand touched the reel of thread. Little Orange naturally raised her right hand to support it. However, the moment she moved, a trace of pain appeared on her face. She gritted her teeth and slowly moved her right hand to the reel of thread. She straightened the reel of thread before placing her right hand back on the bed. "Little Orange, is your right hand still okay?" A familiar voice, one that even appeared in Little Orange's dreams, rang in his ears. "Big Brotherin?" Little Orange was shocked and turned her head in disbelief. Wasn't there a familiar face and a familiar person standing next to the window? Ah, is it really you, Big Brother Rin? Little Orange was pleasantly surprised. She no longer cared about the reel of thread. Just as she was about to get up, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Don't move, don't move. I heard from Fishinya that you haven't fully recovered. Ah, you've seen Miss? You." Little Orange's surprised face was filled with respect, and then a trace of melancholy. He said, "You are really that immortal?" He. Zhang Xiaohua walked up to him with a smile. "Little Fishnia is indeed like a sister to you. She even told you about this. Immortal. Elder Ren, please don't blame her. Elder Sister Ping rode on your David's deer and held the token you gave her. Although she heard from Elder Sister Ping that you picked it up on the road, but Miss didn't think so. She knew that you had always been thrifty and also had deep feelings. Huan, you couldn't have thrown it away. You must have something urgent and had no choice but to let Elder Sister Ping ride on your David's deer. When we found out that the sect leader of the Misty School is Zhang Xiaohu, and that the Misty School is in Pingyang City, didn't you go to Pingyang City before? Your name is so similar to Zhang Xiaohu's. Miss wondered if you were that immortal. He. I forgot about little Fish Nia's intelligence." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "When I accepted little Fish Nia as my disciple, I didn't have time to ask her. I didn't expect that I gave myself away so much." When Little Orange heard this, he was overjoyed and said, "Congratulations, Elder Immortal. Miss has finally been accepted into the Beidou School, and Elder Immortal has finally accepted an extremely intelligent disciple." Then, he felt a little sad. After thinking for a while, he probed, "Miss must be very happy now." Little Orange, when I accepted little Fish Nier into my Beidou School, she is also my junior sister. You don't have to call me Master Immortal. Just call me Big Brother Ren." "Big Brother Ren? Don't. Why don't you call me Young Master Ren like before?" Little Orange said shyly, "I should call you Young Master Zhang, but Young Master Run is too comfortable." "It's okay, Little Orange. Recuperate well. When your body recovers, we will." We still don't know where to find us. If we don't find you, you can go to the Misty School in Pingyang City and look for the leader of the Misty School, Zhang Xiaohu. He will definitely know where we are." "Young Master Ren, I can go now. You, bring me to Miss." Little Orange begged. Zhang Xiaohua shook his head and said, "I have already checked. You are still not in a good condition to move around. Let's leave it at that. It won't be too late to look for us next year." Little Orange looked disappointed and laid down again helplessly. "Oh yes, where is Valley Master Nia? Why isn't he in the valley?" Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. "I don't know. It seems there is something important." Old Master C and the rest of the people from the weapon forging sect came. Then, Valley Master brought some disciples and went out with them. "Miss, didn't she tell you?" Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, "No." Little Orange was stunned. Suddenly, she thought of something and said in shock, "Young Master Run, Miss and Sister Ping went to Pingyang City to look for you right after Valley Master left. How long has it been? Why did you come back to Spring Valley?" Before Zhang Xiaohua could explain, Little Orange realized something and said apologetically, "I forgot that young Master Ren can fly." Seeing that it was getting late, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "All right, Little Orange, do you have any words for Little Fishnia?" "Young Master Ren, are you leaving now?" Little Orange asked. "Yes, I came to Macho City to settle some matters. But when I thought of your injuries, I came over to take a look. After I am done, I still have to rush back to Pingyang City." Zhang Xiaohua said, "Thank you, young Master Run, for still thinking of me." Little Orange was a little happy and said, "I don't have anything to say to Mississippi. I only hope that, in the future, I can still serve Miss." No problem. There are only a few dogs and kittens in Beidou School. It will be lively if you go there, Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. "Ah, really? Thank you, Master Immortal. Thank you, young Master Rin." Little Orange was overjoyed. "All right, you should recuperate first. I'll agree to your request. I will take my leave first." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand, conjured a spell, and flew out of the window. When Zhang Xiaohua was far away and out of sight, Little Orange heaved a long sigh of relief. She released the embroidery in her left hand. The embroidery was a pair of ducks playing in the water. Please vote monthly. Please vote recommendation. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 1146. By the time they left Rejuvenation Valley, night had already fallen, and the lights in Macho City were gradually becoming brighter. Zhang Xiaohua stood in midair with her hands behind her back. She did not release her divine sense, and only used her naked eyes to look down. She saw that in Macho City, every household was lit up with lights. The surface of Macho Lake reflected the surrounding lights and the night sky that had yet to be revealed. It was even more starry than the real night sky. This place. Why is it so deserted? Could it be that something is wrong? Zhang Xiaohua was admiring the view when she suddenly noticed that on the west side of Macho Lake, there was a large area. It was completely dark, and there were no lights. It was completely different from the surrounding lights. If it was a normal day, Zhang Xiaohua might not have noticed it. However, between the clouds and the water, by Yanqiu's palace was dark at night. Zhang Xiaohua was able to recognize it easily and gain a lot of benefits from it. How could he not remember? Thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense and scanned the area. Then, he frowned. This area was a huge manor. It was close to the Sorrowless Lake. Although most of the area was dark and there were no traces of people, there were still many people living around the manor. Moreover, there were many men in martial attire around the manor. They held lanterns in their hands and were constantly on duty. I'm afraid this is the manor of an official. Zhang Xiaohua had just thought of this when another thought popped up. That day when I came to Macho City with my dream, it seems that the dream appeared near this manor. Could it be the incense cult in Macho City? At this moment, a black shadow escaped from the manor in a panic from the southern side of the manor. Not far behind him were two men in martial arts attire. One of them held a torch, while the other held a steel saber. They were hot on his heels. Haha, Zhang Xiaohua saw the black shadow in front of her and couldn't help but laugh. People often wear out iron shoes but still can't find you. I cast a wide net in Macho City but still couldn't find you. I actually met you here today. Wasn't the black shadow in front the worker of the Storm Carriage Company? Judging from the way he fled, he seemed to be quite familiar with the surrounding terrain. However, the two people who were chasing after him were obviously much more skilled than the shop assistant. After they left the manor, they threw away their torches and focused on chasing after him. By the time Zhang Xiaohua had flown behind them, the shop assistant had already been sandwiched between the two of them. You little thief, why aren't you surrendering? A Chinese character shouted with a sinister smile. Heroes, please spare my life. I was just short of some money and wanted to steal some things from your residence. But I didn't get anything. Please spare me. The shop assistant was still arguing, but his eyes were looking around and his feet didn't stop. Hee, with such qinggong, how could you be an ordinary thief? Don't bully me because I can't see. A man said angrily. The other man continued, Yixiang Manor is famous in Emocho City. There isn't a single ruffian in the vicinity who would believe your words? Seeing that the shop assistant was getting closer, one of the men raised his steel knife and laughed sinisterly. Since brother isn't willing to stop, then I'll let you bleed first. However, just as the steel knife was about to fall, a black shadow descended from the sky and grabbed the shop assistant's neck. With a light lift, the man's steel knife fell into the air. The black shadow didn't stop and hovered about 10 feet above the ground. With the shop assistant's body in his hand, he flew far away in the blink of an eye like a nighthawk. When the two men saw this, they couldn't help but be stunned. They stopped in their tracks and looked at each other, their eyes filled with horror. Big brother, I didn't see wrongly, right? Is that someone from the Immortal Tao? Brother, no. You didn't see wrongly, that's right. The other stuttered and shrunk his neck. Brother, let's hurry back and report this matter to the steward. This thief is not from anywhere. Not only did he sneak into our Yixiang Manor at night, he even had an expert from the Immortal Tao to receive him. This matter is serious. The two men turned around and left even faster than when they were chasing after the shop assistant. As for the shop assistant, he had escaped from death and was overjoyed. His body was in midair, and the night wind blew gently. He almost suspected that he was in a dream. That shop assistant was also clever and knew that it was not the right time to speak. He waited for the expert from the immortal Tao to descend from the sky and stop at a secluded place before turning around. Without looking carefully, he bowed and said, "Immortal Elder, thank you for saving my life." After a few kowtows, he offered his gratitude. That person laughed coldly and didn't reply. When the shop assistant heard this, he unconsciously raised his head and probed. This disciple is a subordinate disciple of Qing Yanling Imocho City. I don't know which elder of the immortal Tao is. Ah? This last surprised, was when he saw the face of the person who came. He couldn't help but cry out in surprise. He saw that the face was very young, only about 16 years old. However, the figure was thin and tall, taller than the shop assistant by a head. Wasn't that the person he had seen before at the Storm Carriage Company? In an instant, the shop assistant's back was covered in sweat. "What, you recognized I?" The person who came was indeed Zhang Xiaohua. Her eyes were full of sarcasm as she said coldly, "Immortal Elder, I have eyes but failed to see. I don't know." The shop assistant was incoherent and didn't know what to say. Was there a need to say this? He had reported the situation of this immortal elder's family having excess wealth, and he himself knew the methods of the Qing Yanling Imo. Was there a need to ask the reason why this immortal elder came to find him now? "Immortal Elder, please spare my life. Please spare my life. These are the orders of the owner. I am only following orders." The shop assistant fell to the ground and begged, "Your so-called owner has already died in Ai's hands. You don't have to accuse me. You have to know the consequences of what you have done." Zhang Xiaohua didn't waste time with him. She pointed her finger and used bewitching finger to hit the acupoint at the back of the shop assistant's head. After a while, Zhang Xiaohua's face was filled with anger. She thought to herself, "This Qing Yanling Imo is really despicable. Who knows how many innocent lives it has taken? It's a pity that I don't have the means to get rid of it one by one." "Oh, right, the place you wanted just now. Is it the manor of the fragrant cult?" Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought. Yes, this Yixiang Mountain Manor is the manor of the famous martial arts family, the Gu family. Secretly, it is the base of the fragrant cult in Imocho City. It has been many years. This is what I know from the Banner Lord. "Why did you go to the Yixiang Mountain Manor?" "The Banner Lord seems to be doing something to the Yixiang Mountain Manor. I was just a scout to find out the actual situation." "All right. Tell me the location of your Banner Lord." The shop assistant told Zhang Xiaohua what she wanted to know very clearly. After he finished, Zhang Xiaohua said, "Although you didn't personally kill anyone, according to your information, who knows how many innocent people have died in the hands of others? You can be considered to have deserved more than death. Letting you leave unknowingly is also a reward for your cooperation just now." As she said this, she looked at the shop assistant's blank expression. Zhang Xiaohua sighed slightly in her heart. She stretched out her hand and grabbed the shop assistant's neck. With a slight force, a kacha sound was heard. A stream of blood flowed out from the corner of the shop assistant's mouth. His body went limp and fell to the ground, dead. It's not that there won't be retribution, it's just that the time hasn't come. Once the time is up, retribution will come knocking, Zhang Xiaohua said in a low voice. She soared up again. Tonight, a secret branch of the Righteous Tao Alliance in Imocho City was unlucky. Before the shop assistant could reply, the god of pestilence came knocking on their door. A group of evil men whose hands were secretly stained with blood didn't even get to see the other party's face before their lives were reaped by a swift and fierce sword light. In just the time it took to eat a meal, Zhang Xiaohua soared up from a small courtyard and was about to fly out of Imocho City. But just as she was about to leave the city, she changed her mind and her body flew diagonally towards Lingering Fragrance Manor. Lingering Fragrance Manor was the same as before. Most of the place was pitch black, but there were more disciples patrolling around the manor. It was as if they were guarding against the Righteous Tao Alliance. Zhang Xiaohua concealed her body and landed in a pavilion. Beside the pavilion was a small pond. The lotus flowers in the pond had already withered, and the lotus leaves were also somewhat withered. Looking at the water in the pond, it was flowing slightly. It was actually connected to the water of Imocho Lake. Is there anything strange about this place? When Peacock came to Imocho City, she had to make a trip here. When Ming came to Imocho City, she also had to make a trip here. Whatever they do, they can't talk about it outside. Today, I want to see if there's anything strange about this place. However, with Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense, the entire manor was very normal. It was no different from an ordinary manor. For a moment, there was no way for her to investigate. Hee, I forgot. Zhang Xiaohua slapped her forehead and scolded herself. Didn't I just use the bewitching finger? Won't I know if I ask someone? Sure enough, in a moment, Zhang Xiaohua's body appeared in a garden. Looking at the embroidered building in Xiaohua's garden, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but smile bitterly. So this ordinary embroidered building is the place where the inner disciples of Chanting Fragrance Cult have to pay their respects after arriving at Imocho City? Moreover, other than the inner disciples, all the disciples of Chanting Fragrance Cult are not allowed to come close to this garden. Even the old consecrator of Chanting Fragrance Cult can't come close. Isn't it just a portrait? Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept over and understood. Then, she walked slowly to the front of the embroidered building. Strangely, there was no fluctuation of primordial qi from inside to outside. It was very inconsistent with the status of Chanting Fragrance Cult as a big immortal sect. Something is strange. Something is strange. Zhang Xiaohua, who was used to dealing with all kinds of restrictions of Chanting Fragrance Cult, suspected that there was something strange about this embroidered building that she didn't know about. However, when she activated the Crimson Spirit Protection and walked safely into the first floor of the embroidered building without triggering any restrictions, she couldn't help but feel extremely strange. Taking out a luminous pearl from her arms, Zhang Xiaohua observed the first floor of the embroidered building again with the help of the luminous pearl's brilliance. The first floor of the embroidered building was similar to the first floor of the Misty School's Inheritance Pavilion. It was very clean and tidy. There was only a portrait hanging on the south wall. Under the portrait, there was a quaint table. On the table, there were 3 different styles of incense burners, each with several incense sticks. Please vote monthly. Please vote recommendation. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 1147. Naturally, Zhang Xiaohua's attention was drawn to the portrait. As Zhang Xiaohua expected, the portrait was of a lady dressed in palace attire. Her face was covered with a white veil, and she held a whip in her hand. The only difference was that the background of the lady had changed from a small bridge to a small pavilion. Beside the pavilion was a small lake that was as round as a crescent moon. Looking at the lake, it was similar to Imocho Lake. However, the lake was rippling with waves, and there was no embankment that divided the lake into 2. There was also no frown pagoda. This lady is always dressed in palace attire and a veil. Who knows if she is the lady I saw in the Jadestone Hall? However, her attire and the whip in her hand have not changed. I think she must be the founder of the incense cult that one Wuxin mentioned, Senior Yu Ming Xian. If not for Senior Yu, all the female disciples of the incense cult who come to Imocho City would not need to pay their respects. But, Senior Yu, why is her portrait not on Lingering Fragrance Peak, but in Imocho City? Perhaps Imocho City was built by Senior Yu? And the legendary Lady of Imocho is Senior Yu? Could it be that the stories about Lady of Imocho are all true? But who is the legendary Yifeng? Who is that monk called Xin Kong? Is he a monk from the Dalan Temple? Even if he is a monk from the Dalan Temple, he must be the founder of the Dalan Temple to have such a cultivation level, right? But then again, even the founder of the Dalan Temple could not have such a high cultivation level as Senior Yu. How could she suppress someone under Imocho Lake? Oh right, under Imocho Lake. When Zhang Xiaohua thought of this, he released his divine sense and scanned the bottom of the Imocho Lake. He saw that the Frown Pagoda was buried deep into the lake, and he couldn't see the bottom. At the bottom of the pagoda, there was a restriction that emitted a weak Buddhist light. Zhang Xiaohua was taken aback when he saw the familiar restriction light. Could it be? Xin Kong is really a monk from the Dalan Temple? But what is this? Within the Buddhist light, the faintly discernible 7-colored Buddhist lotus was surrounded by pitch-black threads. It was abnormally dazzling. Moreover, when Zhang Xiaohua's consciousness swept past the restriction, the black thread seemed to have a life of its own as it swayed slightly. As the black thread swayed, Zhang Xiaohua's consciousness seemed to be attracted and slowly shifted towards the Buddhist lotus. This is bad. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked and didn't dare to look again. She immediately withdrew her divine sense and said to herself, Why is this Buddhist restriction so strange? However, the restriction went deep into the earth's core. With Zhang Xiaohua's current cultivation, it was impossible for him to escape so deep into the earth. Therefore, it was impossible for him to escape underground to observe carefully, let alone break the restriction. That restriction has the effect of isolating divine sense, and can even devour divine sense. It is impossible to know who is sealed within the restriction. Therefore, I can't determine whether the legendary carefree girl is Senior Yu. According to legend, as long as I can flood the Frown Tower, I can release the carefree girl from the tower. But ordinary means obviously can't do it. If I want to do it, I can only use the magical power of the immortal Tao. Not to mention that I don't have such means now. Even if I did, the so-called Xin Kong monk must have other means of defense on the Frown Tower. Forget it. Whether the carefree girl is Yu Mingxin or not is just a cause from tens of thousands of years ago. Who knows where the effect is? The carefree girl is a legend in Jing City, and she is very popular. Yu Mingxin is indeed the founder of the immortal Tao. Speaking of which, there is no connection between them. This effect will be left to the fated person of the incense cult. I have no interest in it. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua bowed deeply to the portrait, just like she did in the Misty School's Hall of Inheritance. Senior Yu, I have gained a lot from your incense cult. Let me bow to you as a token of my gratitude. Then, Zhang Xiaohua straightened up, looked at the ladder in the corner, and slowly walked up to the second floor of the embroidery tower. The second floor looked more like a woman's boudoir than the ground floor. However, it had been a long time, and there were no silk objects. There was a futon in the corner, a table in front of the window, a wooden box and a bronze mirror on the table, and a wooden cabinet against the wall. Zhang Xiaohua scanned the room with her divine sense and found that they were all ordinary objects. She didn't sense any fluctuation of vital energy. She even walked to the bronze mirror and looked at it again and again. She didn't sense any abnormalities like the clear sky mirror. This must be where Senior Yu lived in the early years. This table should be a dressing table. It is so simple and crude that there isn't even a stool. What's inside the box? Zhang Xiaohua thought and opened the wooden box. It was similar to the dressing box that Zhang Xiaohua saw in Lady Aya's room in the small village. It was also empty except for a wooden hairpin at the bottom of the box. Strange? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised when he saw the wooden hairpin. Of course, he wasn't surprised that the hairpin was similar to Lady Aya's hairpin. He was surprised that the hairpin was exactly the same as the purple phoenix hairpin. Misty School has a jade slip that is exactly the same as the purple phoenix hairpin. Senior Yu's embroidery room has a wooden hairpin that is exactly the same as the purple phoenix hairpin. What does this mean? Zhang Xiaohua immediately let his imagination run wild. Could it be that the founder of Misty School, Yang Haoya, and the founder of Fragrance Sect, Yu Mingxin, have something that can't be explained clearly? But this kind of thing, why doesn't the founder of Shindao Sect, Wan Wuxin, know about it? Could it be that Senior Huan was deceived by the two of them? Zhang Xiaohua touched his nose and thought for a while. He then took out the 2 purple phoenix hairpins and another jade slip that looked like a purple phoenix hairpin. He compared them with the wooden hairpin. Needless to say, it was obvious. The 4 of them were exactly the same except for the texture. This karma has already been buried in the river of karma. No one else will know about it. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and was about to put away the purple phoenix hairpin. But at this moment, the wooden hairpin that looked like firewood suddenly emitted a weak wave of yuan qi. Although the wave was weak, it was extremely strong. It swept past the purple phoenix hairpin and covered Zhang Xiaohua's body. Then, a suction force rushed towards Zhang Xiaohua's Anaiwan palace. Zhang Xiaohua was caught off guard, and her divine sense was sucked towards the wooden hairpin. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. She hurriedly activated Shen Traction. Her Dan heart spun rapidly, and the innate divine seal on it emitted a faint golden light to counteract the suction force. The suction force did not suck in her divine sense. Instead, it went downwards. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt the true qi in her meridians rushing towards the suction force. It was as if the true qi was going to burst out of her body. Are you kidding me? Senior Yu. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly activated the Carefree Heart Sutra and tried to channel her true qi into her meridians. But the Carefree Heart Sutra still had some effect at first. But as the suction force increased, the Carefree Heart Sutra gradually lost its effect. A portion of her true qi was sucked away by the suction force and channeled into the wooden hairpin. With the influx of true qi, the wooden hairpin gradually glowed. What an unreasonable bandit! Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt a little annoyed at the sympathetic Yu Mingxin. Could it be that everyone from the immortal Tao is this tyrannical? At this time, the Carefree Heart Sutra had already lost its effect. Zhang Xiaohua's Jin Qi became sluggish and was about to completely leave his body. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua heard the faint roar of a dragon. He felt as if all the meridians in his body had gained sentience. His entire meridians moved slightly, immediately canceling out that unparalleled suction force. That suction force was no longer able to suck away even half a strand of Jin Qi. My meridians, when did they move? Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed but also shocked. Following the disappearance of the wooden hairpin's suction force, the brilliance of the wooden hairpin also stabilized. The brilliance overflowed a few times, and a foot-sized ball of light jumped out of the wooden hairpin. Within the ball of light was the appearance of a woman wearing palace robes and a veil. Nascent divinity projection? Zhang Xiaohua snorted, almost moaning. The ball of light flew in front of Zhang Xiaohua and stopped. It quietly floated there. After a moment, the woman in the ball of light spoke. Who are you? Why do you hold the purple phoenix hairpin of my incense cult, but not my incense cult's legacy heart sutra? Zhang Xiaohua secretly despised her. Please, Senior Yu, this isn't the first time I've seen a primordial spirit projection. Even if I told you, would you be able to hear me? Don't be so arrogant, all right? Sure enough, the woman immediately laughed and said, however, I'm seeing you through a primordial spirit projection. Even if you told me, I wouldn't know. However, I'm still very curious. This purple phoenix hairpin is used by my incense cult's legacy heart sutra. You don't have my incense cult's legacy heart sutra, so how did you get it? Either my incense cult has already been destroyed and the purple phoenix hairpin has been obtained by another sect, or my incense cult has reorganized the cultivation world and the legacy heart sutra on you is another sect's legacy heart sutra. Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and laughed. Both of these possibilities seem wrong. Your qi isn't from the incense cult, nor the misty school, nor the Shindao sect or the Great Forest Division. Presumably, another disciple from another cultivation world has come? Or perhaps it's a legacy heart sutra from the ancient cultivation world. Hearing the woman say so much because of her qi, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but curl her lips. This woman, no matter if she's a village woman or an expert from the immortal Tao, they all have the same nature of gossip. I've asked too much. The woman seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. She covered her mouth and laughed. No matter what, you came to my embroidery room with 2 purple phoenix hairpins. It's fate that brought us together. Why should I ask so much? By the way, I'm the founder of the incense cult, Yu Mingxin. I don't know if your master has told you about me? Although Yu Mingxin was wearing a veil, her tone was very arrogant. She had actually obtained a beloved object from a little girl and was showing it off to others. I know. I heard Senior Yu's name from Senior Huan. However, if you ask 10 people in the Jianghu, I'm afraid that even 10 of them wouldn't know who Yu Mingxin is. Although Zhang Xiaohua knew that Yu Mingxin couldn't hear her, she still didn't forget to give her a blow when she remembered that she wanted to absorb her divine sense and qi. Please vote monthly. Recommend bookmark, and tip. Thank you. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote. -4. Chapter 1148. Hee. After hearing my identity, are you very surprised? Envious? You want to see my real face? Yu Mingxin was still smiling. Sweat. Zhang Xiaohua touched her forehead. Why does this senior you speak like little fishinya? Could it be that she's not that old? However, after hearing about Yu Mingxin's real face, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. In the portraits in the Jade Hall of the Fragrance Cult, in Wan Wuxin's Sumeru world, and in the Jade Hall of the Misty School's Ethereal Palace, Yu Mingxin's face was covered with a veil. I wonder what she looks like. However, just as this thought appeared in her mind, Yu Mingxin's voice sounded again. But don't be delusional. Only one person can see my face, and he has already seen it. In this world, no one can see it anymore. Are you kidding me? Zhang Xiaohua almost fell down. Since he won't let you see it, why are you still asking? Sigh. Yu Mingxin let out a long sigh. Her tone was full of sadness, different from her relaxed tone just now. But, so what if he sees it? The immortal Tao is ethereal, and the great Tao is endless. Beautiful women age easily, but the human heart is not what it used to be. He said that the immortal Tao is the only thing in his heart, and that he should have cut off his feelings long ago. But I said that the immortal Tao is confusing, and that it's better to use feelings as a lamp and live freely in the mortal world. He said that everything in the world is a void, and only the immortal Tao is eternal. I said. Yu Mingxin smiled bitterly and said, I'm being silly again. It's been so many years, but whenever I talk about him, I feel that I'm talking too much. Oh right, you must have listened for a long time, and want to know who he is. Zhang Xiaohua was about to nod, but immediately shook her head and said with a smile, Say whatever you want, I don't care if I listen or not. As expected, Yu Mingxin also said, However, right now, I can't tell you. Then, Yu Mingxin looked up at the window and said sadly, I used the primordial spirit projection technique to forcefully split a strand of my primordial spirit and put it into this wooden hairpin. I wanted to leave a little bit of my primordial spirit as a memento. If one day he really sees the essence of love, or if he really regrets what he has done, he will be able to hear my voice when he comes to the embroidery building where we used to live together. But I don't know why, but the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth is becoming increasingly scarce. This Yuan spirit projection of mine has been unable to absorb the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth for a long time. It won't be long before this Yuan spirit projection of mine disappears. Furthermore, if it weren't for your little bit of true energy, it would be troublesome even if I wanted to project my primordial spirit. So, you don't have to blame me for absorbing that little bit of your true energy. In a while, I will use my story to make up for your loss. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she could only be silent. You've sucked away all the true qi. Can I still get it back? Yu Mingxin lowered her head as if she was thinking. After a while, she raised her head and said, My story is very long. You have to listen carefully. It's said that a long, long time ago. Yu Mingxin chuckled and said, Don't laugh. It's indeed something that happened a long time ago. This is also the reason why the Fragrant Religion, Misty School, and Shindao sect were established. I just don't know if the teachers of the Fragrant Religion can still tell you about it. Then, Yu Mingxin repeated the story that Wan Wuxin told to Zhang Xiaohua. There wasn't much difference. However, when she talked about the three of them traveling around before the establishment of the sect, she said, Before the three of us came to this world, there was still the way of immortals. This was what we learned in the secret plane. However, when we were traveling under a cliff, we found an array that was different from the one we learned. After 3 days and 3 nights of relentless attacks, we broke the array and 3 rays of black light flew out from the array. The 3 of us chased after one of them and used our divine abilities to subdue the black light. Only then did we realize that they were actually 3 ancient magical treasures. These 3 magical treasures were different from the ones we used before and had incredible power. Among the 3 magical treasures, 2 of them were the purple phoenix hairpin and the other was the devil refining gourd. These 3 magical treasures were the first magical treasures that we obtained here, and also proved the existence of the Way of Immortals. The 2 purple phoenix hairpins were obtained by Yang Haoya and I. The devil refining gourd was obtained by Wan Wuxin. Because there were 3 magical treasures, one for each of us. Moreover, it was up to fate to obtain the magical treasures. Therefore, the 3 of us didn't feel that there was anything wrong and left happily. Of course, there was indeed nothing wrong with these 3 magical treasures. However, later on, then, Yu Mingxin talked about encountering the Earth's core. However, Yu Mingxin wasn't as frank as Wan Wuxin. She only said that it was something from the forbidden area of the incense cult, Huan Su, but didn't specify what it was. Then, she talked about Wan Wuxin. When Yang Haoya and I were seriously injured, Wan Wuxin of the Shundao sect self-detonated one of Sakura's magical treasures in order to deal a blow to him. Although the effect was achieved, Sakura was also seriously injured at that time and fled in panic. However, Wan Wuxin himself couldn't treat his injuries and died on the spot. That Huan Su was a name that Yang Haoya and I specially named in memory of Wan Wuxin. Looking at Yu Mingxin's increasingly weak brilliance, Zhang Xiaohua touched her nose and said with a bitter smile, "Senior Yu, it seems that you don't have enough time. You're rambling on and on. Why don't you hurry up and finish the story? Could it be that you want to arouse my interest and then absorb my vital energy?" Yu Mingxin ignored her and said again, "But my story has just begun." Then, with a yearning look, she said, "For a long period of time, Yang Haoya and I were recuperating on Lingxiang Peak. Hehe, Yang Haoya's misty peak can't be compared to our Lingxiang Peak. There's nothing there that he wanted. The reason why he wanted to build the Misty School there was because he wanted to scheme for something nearby. Humph. He thought that he knew a lot of secrets and thought that Wan Wuxin and I didn't know. Actually, I don't know whether Wan Wuxin knew or not, but I did. However, I was too lazy to explain. After all, everyone has their own selfish motives." Sigh. Although Yang Haoya and I were seriously injured and our cultivation had regressed greatly, our Tao hearts were on the verge of collapse. But, now that I think about it, those days should have been the happiest days of my life. Then, Yu Mingxin's words were actually a little bashful. The phrase "love grows with time." I have long heard of it. But, I never thought that it would appear on me. Speaking of which, cultivators of my generation have long placed feelings behind the immortal Tao. We only think of achieving the immortal Tao, and don't dare to slack off. Feelings have long been cut off by the sword of wisdom. But, because Yang Haoya and I had our Tao hearts collapsing and our cultivation regressing, we usually healed and talked together. But the love demon actually found a crack in our Tao hearts. We actually fell in love like ordinary people. At that time, we were intimately attached to each other every day and were really happy. Moreover, we both thought that the first magic treasure we got from this place was the proof of our feelings. Because of this, Yang Haoya gave his purple phoenix hairpin to me as a token of love. What about me? Of course, I also gave my purple phoenix hairpin to Yang Haoya. We firmly believe that my feelings should be the same as the purple phoenix hairpin. Although it had experienced many years, it would still be able to endure for a long time. Later, the 2 of us left Lingxiang Peak and came to Carefree City. Well, at that time, there was no Carefree City, only this beautiful nameless lake. Yang Haoya and I, the 2 of us built a city here. Yang Haoya named this city Carefree City, and I was also called Carefree Girl by him. That day, when I asked him what it meant, he shook his head and didn't say anything. What I was thinking that day was nothing more than that. Although the Tao of immortality was unattainable, there was warmth in the world and there was no need to worry. However, I only thought of one of the reasons and didn't think of the other. Why didn't I think of it that day? Yang Haoya called himself Night Wind. Wasn't that the wind that floated alone and had no fixed abode? I thought that he called himself romantic and wanted to be the night wind that brushed against one's face. Sigh. Until one day, Yang Haoya left a letter and left without saying goodbye. Only then did I know. I heard that he had never given up on the Tao of immortality. He heard that the Dalan Temple's Buddhism had a secret technique that could cut off the threads of love with the sword of wisdom. It could turn the love in one's heart into cultivation. He actually abandoned me and went to the Dalan temple alone to look for Master Xian Kong, who had never shown his face. I'm sure. You know what I was thinking at that time? My veil was lifted by him, and he drew a portrait of me beside the nameless lake. My heart was filled with his shadow. How could I not have him? Therefore, I followed him to the Dalan temple and challenged him outside the Dalan temple. I wanted to ask him to come back. Who knew? He actually avoided me and only sent a little monk to tell me that our fate had come to an end. He wanted to cultivate diligently in Buddhism in order to improve his cultivation. I was furious at that time and charged into the Dalan temple without caring about anything else. Sigh, in my rage, I couldn't help but show no mercy. I actually killed many monks in the Dalan temple. At that time, Master Xian Kong of the Dalan temple was actually not there. In the end, Yang Haoya saw that I had killed too many people and could only hold the purple phoenix hairpin in his hand. He knelt in front of me and asked me to stop. He would rather return the purple phoenix hairpin to me and let me cut off his head than come back with me. But how could I do it? How could I destroy his Tao heart? Sigh, I had no choice but to take the purple phoenix hairpin. But when I wanted to throw the purple phoenix hairpin back to him, I couldn't bear to do it. It seemed that if I threw it, I would cut off all ties with him and never see him again. Therefore, I could only laugh coldly and turn to leave the Dalan temple and return to Lingering Fragrance Peak. After that, I named the palace on Lingering Fragrance Peak as Emotion Palace. The name of Lingering Fragrance Peak was given by Yang Haoya, and I couldn't bear to change it. Yu Mingxin's voice became weaker and weaker until it was almost inaudible. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but perk up her ears. Following that, my cultivation remained stagnant and my Tao heart couldn't be rebuilt. Therefore, I left the 2 purple phoenix hairpins in Emotion Palace and returned to Worry City. -4. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.